Okay, I believe we are settled and we can start the Future is Remote Online. So hello everyone, my name is Kerdisino, I'm from Albania and I'm currently located in Tirana. I have the pleasure to work as the head of demand generation for native teams and the privilege of being your host for the day. I want to wish you all a warm welcome to the 5th edition or the Future is Remote and the first online edition of our event, and would like to thank all of you who are present today in big numbers and from more than 7 countries. Before we start, I would like to provide you with a little bit of a background about our conference, The Future is Remote, which is an event founded and supported by native teams with a mission to enable the remote movement in the Balkans and East European regions. The movement started in Macedonia and Albania in 2022, to then move in Serbia and Croatia during 2023, and then to transition to this year, which will be full of surprises, and this event is only the first one of the great series to come. Tens of companies and hundreds of attendees have been part of our event so far, and we consider ourselves blessed to share with you the knowledge and know-how about the remote movement. As always, great events are difficult to host without great foundations. And for this, I would like to initially thank native teams for the constant support. As a company that enables remote workers worldwide to get paid and manage their finances while revolutionizing the self-employment for freelancers, native teams' mission is to give every individual the freedom to be the hero of their employment story. The remote movement itself has also changed accommodation for good, and our friends at Flataway are working very hard to redefine housing for global citizens worldwide. Make sure to stay with us because they have a lot of surprises for you as the webinar will go on. I want to also thank and to give big kudos to our goodie bag sponsors because they are making sure that you not only leave this webinar with a lot of knowledge, but you also leave this webinar with a lot of gifts. Now, to focus on the first topic, which is definitely a hot one. We will be speaking about remote work and how it's changing in the post-pandemic period. To give you a little bit of a background, remote work is a way of working that was first seen in the early 2000s when the internet started doing its first big steps, but it got its true form during the COVID-19 pandemic when thousands of companies saw it as the only opportunity to survive through the quarantine times. Well, the pandemic thankfully went away, and with a big number, with it going away, a big number of companies actually still continued to embrace the remote work way of working and living as well. This until the mid 2023, when we witnessed a significant number of companies urge their employees to come back in the office and started taking measures for the ones who didn't. Naturally, after following this transition, a lot of questions pop in one's minds, and for this reason, we have decided that the first panel of this event will be called The Post-Pandemic Remote Landscape. Is it the twilight of remote work or the dawn of a new era? To discuss this panel, we have invited a selected group of people who all work in companies that have adapted remote work on a different way. They will talk about us with us about their experience with remote work, decisions on hybrid, and their efforts to go back into the office. Together, we will discover what lies behind these decisions and what are the key factors that make a decision maker choose one method over the other. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you all with Elona Ymeri from Assist Digital Albania, Magdalena N from Sofascore, and Jack Thorogood from Native Teams Limited. Thank you, dear panelists, for being here. And since we are on a webinar fashion, let's give a quick introduction to ourselves for the audience, starting maybe with you, Elona.
Thank you, Skirti. So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, actually, and I'm very happy. My name is Elona, as everyone can see. I have been working for Assist for more than 4 years now. I have been working as a business manager, then as a contact center manager, and then as a service delivery manager. We are one of the biggest BPO in Albania, not only in Albania market, but also we are in other markets, and not only about BPO, but also about the, let's say, the AI products that we are developing for many different clients. So in case that you are going to have any question for me, I will be more than happy to answer everything.
Okay, thank you very much, Elona, for the presentation. Magdalena, can we continue with you?
Sure. Hello, I'm Magdalena. I'm a data operations team lead in Sofascore. Sofascore is a product company. We are a sports platform striving to become #1. So a lot of hiring, a lot of different methods we are using, whether it's remote or in office work, mostly in office. And I'm here to answer any questions that may pop up.
Thank you very, very much. Jack?
Great. Cool, and thanks, Gertie, and thanks for having me on the presentation this morning, and great to be here with my fellow panelists. So I'm the CEO and founder of Native Teams, founded Native Teams, actually it was in early 2020, so my memory doesn't entirely serve me correctly, but I guess that was the very earliest of days of the pandemic, and really we grew Native Teams during the course of the pandemic. So this topic is one that we've, same as everybody else, I guess, lived through, but we lived through both in terms of building a business, really understanding how remote work might work for us over that period, but also I guess we've perhaps in some ways been a beneficiary of some of the trends that the pandemic hastened. So yeah, great to be on a panel, Gertie. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jack. And since you started also doing an intro, as Native Teams is a remote first company, Jack, I would like to ask you, and to start the questions of this panel, how do you assess the recent shift by big tech companies towards hybrid or return to the office models, considering the evolution of remote work?
So I guess from my perspective, I'd say it's important that we don't conflate hybrid with return to office, because hybrid, to be frank, for all of the good things that people want to get out of remote work, hybrid can play a part of that as well. I would consider us, to be honest with you, to be a hybrid company in a large part, and that means we have some people that work remotely, some people that prefer to work from home, and yet we all, in many cases, will come together for certain events when some in-person collaboration time is time well spent as well. So I think it's important to differentiate a little bit between the various models. Forced hybrid is a bit different. Forced hybrid in terms of you must come to the office 3 days a week. Well, that's a return to an office. To be frank, that's not really so much, I guess, a more flexible hybrid approach. In terms of the shift of the big tech companies, some of the big tech companies towards it, I think first and foremost, it's lazy. It's easy for somebody to think, well, look, this whole managing a remote workforce side of things is difficult. Let's just bring everybody back to an office. It will be easier. We'll be able to kind of see who's in the office, who isn't in the office, stand over their shoulders and see who's doing what. I think it shows a real lack of trust in terms of one's colleagues. So to be frank, a failing even back in the hiring process in terms of hiring the right people that you feel are going to want to do their best for the company, whether they're in an office with somebody breathing down their neck or not. And I think it's just a kind of to be honest, big tech companies leading this charge, it shows them becoming everything that perhaps when they started those businesses they didn't want to become. I guess the Facebooks and the Googles of this world now, who are and particularly Twitter, I know is a good example of a whole sort of push to return to the office. Those are companies that kind of started with inspiration and enthusiasm and excitement and the kind of we're going to change the world mentality of many a startup and an earlier stage scale up, and they've ended up becoming like the IBMs and the Dells and the General Electrics and all of those kind of companies that went before them that perhaps when they started the businesses they never wanted to become. I think that shift back to the office, it's the easy option, but it shows a lack of imagination, and to be frank, it makes up for a lack of that kind of cultural spark that perhaps startups and scale-ups still really want to have.
Thank you very much, Jack. We will go over also a little bit later into the panel on how the startups and scale-ups will be impacted maybe by this kind of a trend that is going on right now. I would like to revert to Elona to have one question for her, because Access Digital is the biggest BPO in Albania, and Access Group is one of the biggest companies in Europe. So Elona, I would like to ask you, in your opinion, what are the primary motivations driving big tech companies to reconsider remote work and lean towards in-office or hybrid models?
Well, I was following very closely Jack in what he was mentioning, and I kind of agree with him, but I think that it's very important when we are assessing this kind of topic to take in consideration also the typology, and also the importance of productivity, innovation, flexibility, what we are offering to our employees, but what mostly it's important is the fact what the company is producing. It's very important to take in consideration that when assessing it, it's also the security, the data security of what we are doing and how we can, let's say, monitor or focus into that. In regard to assist, we have to divide, let's say, the company, because as I mentioned in the beginning, it's the part of the BPO, it's a part of the digital. When we are talking about BPO, it's important to assess also different levels of management or of operational. In regard to the main BPO, so agents and our operational staff, it's important to focus also on the cultural and the collaboration. What we have seen is that with the passing of time, it might happen that people who are working from home, they lose a bit of relationship, so the human relationship or also the collaboration with all the team. And that's the reason why we found that the optimum at this moment, it's the hybrid model. But again, I feel that with the passing of time, with more innovation, more tools that are related to work from home and also hybrid model, everything will change. Also on ASIS, from the ASIS level.
Okay, thank you very much. One follow-up on this one. So when it comes to assist, I want to understand more on how things are currently divided between, you know, who works remote and who works the hybrid model. So let's say when it comes to the BPO, the agents are mostly preferred to work from the office, and then maybe some other teams are working remotely, or how do you choose and how do you divide your teams within assist?
So basically, we have three different categories. We have agents who are working only from home. And it's very important to understand or to underline the fact that one of the things that ASIS is offering mostly is flexibility, because it's important also to understand the generations that we are working with. Gen Z, they want flexibility. So you have to adapt to that. Millennials, they are more toward flexibility, but also the old style and so on. We have agents working only from home. This is their request. Well, there is a certain policy that you have to keep stable results. If not, then you have to return to the office until a certain point. Then we have agents who are working hybrid. So some days from home, some days from the office. We don't force people. So we don't define 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. It's up to them, or it's up to the need of the company, how many days they are going to work. And then we have also people working from the office because they are tenured. They expand their knowledge, they expand the culture, they are doing the mentorship program. That for us is very important to expand this culture that we have. But apart from that, it's their desire to work from the office. And for us, the most important thing is to respect their need and also their desire.
Yeah, thank you very much for this explanation. I'm also a person who likes to work mostly from the office, not a specific office, but on an office setup, and that's why also on native teams we have multiple office on several countries where we can go and we can, you know, get closer with our team members as well. So that would be a great thing to have for every company, in a sense, like we make a decision. If I want to join the office, I join the office. If I want to work hybrid, I work hybrid. If I want to stay remotely for most of the time, that's the same setup. So thank you very much for this knowledge. I would like to ask you, Magdalena, about Sofascore. From the companies, as you mentioned also during your presentation, from the companies that we have today on the panel, Sofascore would be more leaning towards the on-site work model, even though also you embrace the remote work. We would like to know, how are these decisions made in terms of where to lean on, and what are the key metrics your side monitors when deciding on what location model to pursue, if it's like a remote work or on-site?
Okay, so for us, after the movement to return to the office started, and before we decided on our way of work, several surveys and analysis of different departments inside the firm have been done by our HR department. What's been established that most of the people wanted to work from the office. We have like 25% of our employees that are working remotely, whether it's because they're from a different country and we do not have offices there, or it's because they chose to. What we have as a policy is you have to decide if you want to work in office or remote. We do not have a hybrid option, let's say it like that. That was within the surveys that that the people have filled out. It was established that they are either for in-office or for remote. Some positions are definitely easier for the company to be in office, because as a product company, you're resolving issues every day. There is something that's come up, some decision that needs to be made that requires various departments to give their input. So it's really easier when we are all at the same place in the same time. We also have some positions that are definitely, people are able to choose whether they want to be remote or in office. What we've also found is not that it's laziness, not that somebody wants to micromanage, because even in office, we do not have micromanagement. For my team, they can come when they want, they do their work, they go home. I do not check if they've come at 8 o'clock, at 9, at 10, that's totally fine. But what we've seen is that when you're in office, you get a lot of information that would fly over your head if you were remote. So you can see something some other team is doing, and you can comment on that with your colleague face to face. But if your colleague is online, it's difficult that you would be writing messages if it's not something that's impacting you right that second. So I believe that the companies will definitely have to make the decisions for themselves, every company. I don't believe there is a right or a wrong way.
Yeah, definitely. That's only the way that it suits the purpose of the company. I would like to ask you, since you mentioned that you also have certain employees remotely and also on site, and you have made these decisions, of course, by doing all the necessary research, the surveys and everything. So you did your homework before making decisions. My question would be around performance, in terms of like, do you see a difference in performance between maybe people with the same role, but people who are remote and people who are on site, or the onboarding processes, maybe because remote might take a longer time to properly onboard?
Yes, that's definitely something we actually analyzed, because we've had some people, we were for the same position onboarding in office, and we've had to onboard remote since they are in different countries. What we've seen is not a difference in productivity in terms of how much work they can do. It's a difference in taking responsibility, because as I said, in office, you hear a lot of things from different departments. You get the feel of what needs to be done in a certain situation. But when you're remote, you kind of miss out on that things that are so interpersonal that nobody thinks to even write a message about that. And they're not like situations that repeat daily, but they come up in once in 2 months, once in 3 months. So that's something we've seen. What we've also seen is if we do the onboarding in office, like a month or two, those people, even if they go to remote work, they still have that that same feeling, and they still have that connections with their colleagues. So we definitely like to, if possible, do the onboarding in office, even for remote workers who will be going remote.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this information, Magdalena. Then I have more of a broader question. I want to get back to what Jack was mentioning earlier about maybe the Twitters of the world becoming what they swore to destroy, in a sense, becoming the companies that they didn't want to be once they were startups. And Jack, I would like to revert back to you, because you initiated this line of thought. When it comes to big tech companies which now are making these decisions to go back from the office, are, let's say, stopping promotions for remote workers and so on. How do you think that this would impact the new startups and scale-ups in the way that they will embrace the movement?
Great. So a couple of thoughts on that one, and just to briefly touch upon a couple of points that Magdalena made. So first off, the onboarding side of things, just on that one. So we found that onboarding is in good quality. I'm sorry, Scully, to slightly digress, but just it's worth sharing an experience, I think, on this one. So we found that with onboarding, that is the single biggest determinant in terms of, is somebody going to succeed within a business or not. So it doesn't matter whether it's in office or remote. When we've kind of made an effort, when we followed the playbook for onboarding, if we've succeeded in that, if we put in the effort, the chances of that person remaining with us for the long term and being a really valuable contributor to the team is so much higher than if we did a poor job of the onboarding because whoever should have been doing it was too busy or whatever it may have been. So I think that's something that, whether it's remote or whether it's in office, yeah, personally from a experiential perspective, I can't overstate the importance of a good quality onboarding for sure, just when it comes to bringing anybody into the team. And just another point, and again, sorry, Skerdy, for slightly derailing your question on this one, but the point you made about the surveys was really interesting, Magdalena, because you mentioned you did the surveys and you have you decided, look, it's going to be a bit of a binary choice. You're either remote or you're in the office. It's not the hybrid side of things. So to be frank, we probably weren't as scientific as you. We didn't really ever do surveys on this side of things. But leaving people to their own devices, what we've tended to find is that I'd say a majority of people that have the choice will do a few days in the office and a few days working from home. So we didn't do the surveys, and I'm not sure if you'd have done the surveys, what the results would have been. But by just leaving people to their own devices, we found that kind of hybrid model has kind of emerged by default anyway. People like that kind of combination, that mix, as things have gone on. So anyway, I slightly digress on that one. It's been interesting to kind of see, when left to their own devices, how this has evolved. To come back to your question, Skerdy, and apologies for slightly going off on a tangent. When it comes to how some of the bigger tech companies' decisions will impact startups and their decision making, so I think by and large it's got to purely be in the interest of startups and earlier stage scale-ups for some of the bigger tech companies to be taking these decisions. The fact is that it's going to come down to talent, and it's going to come down to who can attract the best talent. And there's going to be a bunch of people that just, once the IBMs, the Dells, the Twitters, whoever say, look, you've got to come and work from the office, no ifs, no buts, you're not going to get promoted if you work from home or whatever it might be, then that kind of perhaps slightly more innovative, passionate, kind of dialed in type individual, self-starting individual might think, look, these businesses are not for me. I want to go and find a job at a startup, even if they can't pay me as much as one of these big guys would be able to pay me. So that's got to really be in the interests, I think, of the startups. It gives them an angle which costs them nothing. In fact, it can be less expensive sometimes to not have to put everybody up in an office. So it kind of gives them a big advantage for some of that top talent that they might want to have, and to frank, talent which is probably better suited to work in a startup stroke scale up environment anyway. So I think that's a big win. I just think one of the slight issues that some of these startups and scale ups might face is whether the management within those startups or those smaller businesses thinks, hang on a second, if all of these big companies are doing it, perhaps I should be doing it anyway. If they don't really think it through and think, well, hang on a second, they've got a huge big office with 10 years left on the lease they need to fill, so they're going to, again, that might be a driver for them to kind of bring more people back into the office. If people don't make the decisions based on their own circumstances, then they could make the wrong ones and kind of jump on this bandwagon of trying to bring people back to an office or have an office and bring people back to it, which may be the wrong decision for them. And also, if they have perhaps less enlightened investors, some of those investors might be saying, oh, well, you guys need to make sure everybody's in the office. Look at Twitter, they're bringing everybody back in the office. So if people are going to be sheep and follow where some of the kind of the bigger names lead, then that could cause some problems. But otherwise, I think it's nothing but a win for the smaller companies, because it does give them more of an opportunity in that competition for talent.
Yeah, this is a great perspective, Jack. I didn't think about this like in this way until you started speaking, but it really makes sense for these for this change to be an opportunity for smaller companies who, as you mentioned, can hire individuals, maybe not giving the big salaries that these top companies are giving, but by providing them more flexibility, and also a bigger challenge, because truth to be told, startups are roller coasters in a good way, because they excite you, they make you work on multiple things at the same time. I would like to, since you mentioned a little bit, companies starting having promotions for remote workers within their organization, Elona, I would like to ask you, I mean, Dell was like
Sorry to interrupt, Skadi. I think Magdalena had her hand up, and we should probably give her a right to respond, being as
Sorry.
Sorry, Magdalena. I didn't see that. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on what Jack said. I think the big companies with big names like Google, like Twitter, they believe they can set the terms for employees, which is true up to a point, unless you want some top talent that will set the terms. But I really believe that startups are more likely to adapt to employee wishes.
Okay, thanks very much, Magdalena. And sorry, I didn't see the hand up over there. So we can also start with you again, Magdalena, since you were speaking. When it comes to the recent decision that Dell has made into not giving a promotion to remote workers, I would like to understand both from Sofascore and also from Assist Digital's perspective, how are you treating this this thing in terms of like, are remote employees, do they have the same career growth opportunities that also on-site employees have, and what's the company policy about this one?
Okay, for us, they definitely have the same career opportunities. It definitely depends on your personal productivity on the work that you are doing. Personally, in my team, I've promoted a remote worker recently, like 2 months ago, to a really responsible position where he's leading people that are in the team. So that was definitely his merit. He worked really hard, and we don't make those differences like remote or in office for that to depend whether you can be promoted or not. For me, I don't like that type of thinking.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that as well, because I'm remote team manager, so it's always good when we have good growth opportunities in the companies that we work for. So Elona, on your side, how are the team leaders looking in Assist, high-end decision makers in Albania? Your offices look very cool, by the way. But how is
we
it
have
going for you?
5 so far. Well, actually, I wanted to add something in the first question that maybe I missed in regard to the remote working and the importance of coming to the office or having the possibility of the hybrid model. We haven't done a survey because I agree with Jack that you might have different opinions in regard to that. But we have received, through the different team meetings that we had with our team, we have received different feedbacks in regard to people wanting to come to the office. And not only that, but based also on the feedback that we received by our giant clients, giant of the industry, like one of the biggest one on the travel and tourism. Apart from the hub that we are having in Albania, we're having also satellites, which means that people who are working in other cities, they can come in very small offices that we have in other cities. They can come and work like few days, because they might need some help, they might need some support, they might need some mentorship. So this is not forcing them, but this is a tool that we are providing to them to get the appropriate help and then return back to working from home. When it comes to promoting, we don't have a rule, so we are not forcing, or we are not categoric in meaning that we are not promoting anyone. We would advise and like people to work from the office, meaning that we would like to have them the hybrid model, because this is the way how we operate. Again, I have to repeat myself, the fact that the hybrid model, it's not forced, so there is no 3-2 days. It is an hybrid model where it's on rotation and you have to pick, so it's your right to do that. But in our case, we have promoted also fully remote people. The main focus for all the companies, and I agree with Jack what he mentioned, it's now who can get the best talent, and we are getting and fighting to get best talent instead of fighting to get people working from home or from the office.
Thank you. And while we are at it, I will just piggyback on what you just said. So when it comes to talent, which is, as you mentioned, the key factor that determines the success of a company, how has the remote work movement, and how has the fact that you are also embracing the remote work model impacted your search for talent?
if I started in this way, I do remember then during the pandemic, I was the one that I was fully against the remote working. I'm sorry, I have to say that. And I love the office, and I was thinking that office it's one of the best tools for the cultural point of view, for productivity, for security, and so on. But time evolved, and you see different tools evolving, coming to you, using, and so on. What we have to focus now, it's a part that's not only what is attractive on the market today. It's not only the financial part. It's how and how many possibilities you give to someone or to your potential employees to grow, the flexibility where they can pick, where they can work, and so on, and also the innovation that you can give for them. In our case, giving this flexibility, so remote working, it led us and helped us to find very good talents. And we have seen one of the most interesting thing, and I'm not speaking here not only about Albania, but I'm speaking in general about us as digital. We have seen very good talents working from home, not only from Albania, but also from other states. And this is something very good for us. So not only local, but also global.
Okay, thank you very much about this one. I would like to also address with Jack this. So Jack, native teams, I will have a personal comment here. What I like to call our company is a little bit the United States of the Balkans, because we are not only working together, but we are also uniting a lot of cultures and a lot of countries, a lot of neighboring countries. So Jack, in terms of talent-wise, how has the remote work movement enabled native teams to get the best possible talent, and how easy it is for native teams to get talent?
Yeah, sure. So it's made all the difference in the world, I think, when it comes to getting talent. For two reasons, really. So one of them, and actually, which slightly answers the question that's been asked in the chat as well. So I think there's probably of the people that we interview for roles, there's probably 20 or 30% of people that, if we didn't offer remote working or at least flexible working, they just wouldn't be interested. So that would be roughly the percentage, I'd say, at least in terms of the applicants to our roles. And yeah, that might be a little bit self-selecting, and also we probably mentioned in the ads that we're supportive of that. But I'd say probably 20 or 30% of people we just wouldn't have access to. They wouldn't be applying for the roles if we didn't offer that as an option. But more importantly, I guess perhaps one might analogize this a little bit to and I'll be cautious with this analogy, but you might think a little bit about internet dating, for example. So back in the day, when you were trying to find a life partner or whatever, well, in the oldest of days, you probably had the scope of the village, which might have been 200 people or something. But now, with the advent of online dating, if we kind of to go back to the work environment, if you can offer remote working, they don't have to come from the village or the town or the city where the company might be based. They can literally be anywhere, provided they have a good enough internet connection, etc., decent communication skills, and they're prepared and happy to work from home, perhaps the time zones work, etc. So it opens up a whole bigger world of talent. But then I think it kind of starts to you have to be thinking more about the kind of cultural side of things as well, because I know, Gerda, you mentioned that we have many different cultures to an extent represented within the business, although I'd say within the Balkans, even though one may have very strong senses of national identity, to be frank, everybody's more the same than they might like to admit on that side of things. But yeah, for sure, that move to remote, it literally removes all of the borders that one might have when it comes to hiring people, particularly, and this isn't meaning to grind our own particular axe, but with the service that we provide, where we actually make it much easier to do the contractual aspects of hiring outside of your home country, then really, the borders are removed and you have access to truly global talent. So that's made all the difference, because back in the day, a small company like ours, or I know we're growing now, but particularly when we started, we were tiny. You'd have really had such a small pool of talent to draw upon, but now we really have access to just the right people for the job, irrespective of where they're going to be. So it makes all the difference, I'd say, if you're open to remote working. And I think that's the same for all of our businesses here, because I know Magdalena mentions, whilst they have a focus on an office environment to a large extent as well, they do support that remote working, and I'm sure that helps bring in the talent that might be needed for some of those harder to fill roles or whatever it could be.
Thanks very much for the input, Jack. And when it comes to having remote talent, remote teams, and you also have remote leadership, one of the things that I had to reinvent myself a little bit was I was mostly working on an office environment throughout the beginning of my career, and as I got hired in native teams, which was more of a remote company, I saw that I also needed to slightly change the way that I manage my teams. And I want your opinion, Magdalena, on this one. Do you think that you also need to reinvent yourself a little bit as a leader when you also have hybrid or remote employees?
Yes, for me, I started my career as a leader in another company, fully remote. So I was working from home, my team was working from home. So I actually grew up, let's say, as a manager in that sort of role. So for me, it's not that difficult to adapt, to be able to, like I said, the team member that got a promotion, with him I have weekly meetings, while with the team that's in office I have monthly meetings, because it's enough since we see each other every day and comment in the hallway on any sort of issue that might arise. But with Mislav, I have to remember to schedule a call every week just to talk, even if there is no issue. Sometimes when talking with him, something comes up that he didn't even think to mention to me before. So it requires more adaptability from the part of the manager if you have remote team members, and you have to think a lot more about them than if you see them every day in the office.
Okay. And Elona, from your end, has the leadership model changed since ASE started embracing remote work as well?
It has. You have to be, and I agree with Magdalena, you have to be more empathic, you have to be more innovative, you have to find the right tools to communicate with people working from home, because having your people in the office, then you interact on a daily basis and you can have immediate reaction or immediate understanding, and you can have less time on explaining, and you have to properly schedule meeting and organization with people working from home. And something that it's really did the changes also on the mindset, it's creating this human relationship with people, especially for the one working from home, because it can get lost a bit. So that was one. And the second one is, again, trying to be as much innovative as you can to optimize this relationship, but also to find the proper tool how you can communicate with them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Scott, if you
Yes,
don't mind,
Jack.
if I just add something, sorry, to that one note as well. The points you both mentioned, Elona and Magdalena, in terms of you having to be a little bit more intentional about setting up the meetings for the remote workers and what have you, I think that's got to be a really good thing, and because that means that actually you're putting in place processes to get the best out of people, rather than relying on serendipity and are you going to bump into somebody in the corridor and have that conversation, which is both kind of good to have the structure, but also it probably helps you get the most out of some of those kind of hidden gems of talent that otherwise, perhaps they're a bit more introverted. They're not the kind of, they might avoid you on the corridor, or Magdalena, or something along those lines. So actually, if you have in place the structure for that, it kind of gives all sorts of different people and their different mentalities the same stage with which to engage with you upon as well. Elona, sorry, you had your hand up.
No, I just wanted to support you on what you mentioned about the introvert. It's like the same relationship that you have for people working from home. So you have to push them and create and build this relationship, and also you have to grow them, because having them on a daily basis, you can interact more and you can understand also where they are lacking and which skills they are lacking from a very short performance overview or an overview, skilling overview that you are having. People working from home, you need to have a very well-defined process, what you are discussing, what you want to gain from that discussion, weekly, daily, whatever it might be. But it's like this introvert has to blossom, and you can have a very nice talent from it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you very much. So one thing that I would like to ask to the wider panel is, so when it comes to the key factors that will determine the future about if remote work will be prevalent, or if we'll have a turning back point into the office, or we will have hybrid mode being the king of all models. What do you think will be the key factors that will determine this? And we can start with you, Jack.
So I get, well, first off, it's going to be company by company what works best for the companies concerned. I think in terms of, there's going to be a couple of key drivers. One of those is going to be generations of leadership. I think as people that have got more experience of remote work move into more senior positions, that will only hasten the move to further remote work because people will be familiar with it. Now, remote work isn't for everybody, for sure. Some people just do thrive more in an environment. I don't know, perhaps our communications are not as adept as they might be, but to be frank, that at the moment is only ever gained through experience, because the universities and what have you don't teach people how to better work remote, so you only really kind of gain that through experience. So I think that means that over time there will just be a hastening to remote work as I say, kind of the people with more experience of it come to greater positions of seniority. I think secondly, the technology continues to improve and increase, and just minor things. For example, better integrations between your project management tools and your email and your kind of your Slack type products and stuff. All of that, those are incremental changes, but they're happening every single day, and that therefore makes it easier every single day to work from home as well. So I think those are important drivers. But I think it really comes down to companies listening to their existing team members as to what those existing team members want, and that might change over time as well as people kind of their life circumstances change, or they might feel the relative benefits of working from an office or home change. But also they need to listen to future employees as well, to the talent that they're trying to hire, and kind of get that feedback and take that on board. And I think that will evolve people's understanding as well. But really, I know I'm perhaps a slightly biased on this, because it's how we've built our company, and we didn't have any choice because we built the company starting in the lockdown, so we kind of were set down this trajectory anyway. But from a personal perspective, I think we'll fast forward 10 years or perhaps a little bit more, and at least in the knowledge sector, not every sector of course can accommodate remote work. If you're I don't know, a car mechanic, you have to work from a garage, you can't work and do that remotely. But I think we'll look back, for those of us in the knowledge and remote working sector in 10 years' time and think, goodness me, how did people used to expect everybody to come into the office? That's ridiculous. And I think that's probably the perception that we'll end up having in due course. And the current generation of those who are pretty zealous in terms of everybody coming back to the office, their star will have waned, and those who have the greater experience of remote working will perhaps be more to the fore. So I think it's only going one way, Skerdi, in summary.
Okay, thanks very much, Jack. I believe that now we can jump to our Q&A session, because I see that there's interest from the participants, from the attendees here. Dejan Njatovic, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness for whatever name I don't pronounce on the correct way just beforehand, is asking, based on your experiences, what is the percentage of hirings where people see remote work as a great benefit, and how much of them do not ask about this option at all? I'm going to pass this to you, Elona, as Assist is a company that has a lot of employees, so please do tell us about this one.
Yeah, actually, when I read the question, I was like, can I answer? So Dan, I can mention the fact that 2 years ago the remote work was not Quest, or it was like 20% of our employees were mentioned the remote working. And I can mention you the fact now that during this year we have another ramp up for one of our biggest clients. Approximately more than 90% of our employees are mentioning. So the people that we are aiming to hire are mentioning the remote working. So remote working now, it's not anymore a solution that was found for the pandemic. Remote working now, it's a value that it's added, and if it's not added by your company, then another company will add it and will, let's say, bring more value and will get more talents than you. So 90% or more.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Elona. I will jump to Magdalena with Veljko's question. what mechanisms do you apply for remote workers for remote worker productivity tracking?
Okay, so we have some operational roles that are remote. For those, we have really specific metrics like how many games they can follow, the speed with which they change the live scores, things like that. We also have some colleagues that work in sales, things like that. So different metrics depending on the position. Definitely, everything that's operational is really easy to track. I'm sure Elona agrees with me because I know the metrics in customer support or things like that. Everything that's productivity based, like having leads, like talking with clients, I think it requires a lot more flexibility, and you can track the end result in the end.
Okay, thank you very much. And to go to Ripa's question, how to successfully move from an on-site work to a remote work one, considering that most remote work job descriptions mention that you should have experience before that one. Jack, I would like you to tackle this one.
Cool. So I think this question could be taken both ways. It could be taken from a company perspective or a talent perspective. I think this is probably asked from a talent perspective. And I'd say really it just comes down to, well, first off, I mean, I know in our advertising for new hires, we never ask about remote experience. I guess perhaps we take that as a bit of a, I don't know, a given that people can interact and can work remotely nowadays as well as in an office. I'd say really just if there is a company that's kind of really insisting upon this, kind of still go through the interview process and just do a great job of communication. I think that's, to me, that's the kind of the question in terms of why people will be asking, do you have remote work experience? Yes or no. It comes down to, look, is this somebody who can kind of get something when it's delivered remotely? Because that's, I know, an issue I've experienced in the past, where some people, you just have to over-explain things so much in a remote environment that it just doesn't work. So I think if you come across in an interview as really kind of understanding the questions that they're asking, well, listening to the questions that they're asking, understanding it, and then giving the right response, then you're going to tick that, yeah, this person can work remotely box anyway, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much, Jack. So I would like to also, Nicole's Ayako questions is a great one. How do you venture into remote from an on-site job seamlessly, putting into consideration the remote sector is competitive? And in this case, Nicole is from an African country. She believes she needs to prove herself 10 times more than a regular contender in order to get the job. And I also want to piggyback on this one because when I was initially applying on a lot of companies for the EMEA region, as a remote worker, I noticed that I wasn't getting a lot of calls. And I thought maybe it was because my location was on Albania. So I want a wider panel to discuss about this one.
Great. So I don't know. I know I can speak from experience because we have African colleagues as well as Balkan and European colleagues. So perhaps I can start, but Magdalena and Elona, please, chime in as I miss anything and as you feel there's more valuable things to add. So I think the one erroneous perception that some people might have from applicants from African countries is purely technical, to be honest with you. It's internet connection. I think this is from back in the older days of poorer internet connectivity. I know, for example, in my earlier professional days, we tried to recruit some colleagues from much further afield. I think in that particular case, actually, it was Philippines. And the internet connection was just so bad that the interview was a disaster because it was all kind of glitchy and what have you. And I think that left a bad perception to think, well, hang on a second, look, we can't even nail a proper conversation remotely on an interview. How's this going to work day in, day out when there's perhaps slightly less pressure in a situation? So I say that's an issue for sure, to make sure that people understand that there is better connectivity nowadays. There's not going to be communications problems. African time zones are often much more in keeping with European time zones than, let's say, American or Indian ones might be even. So from a time zone perspective, it's great. I think a lot of it comes down to connectivity. I'd also say perhaps when one is having an interview, try and do it in an environment that the person might be more familiar with. And I guess this is perhaps to kind of slightly offset some of those predetermined biases that people might have. If you kind of do the interview with a Zoom background that everybody else is using a similar kind of a Zoom background, that one in a coffee shop with the coffee smoke to steaming or something along those lines, people might think, oh, well, actually, there's nothing different between this person I'm speaking with in Africa versus this person I'm speaking with in a different country. So perhaps a degree of familiarity, which I know one shouldn't feel you have to do in this day and age, but in the real world, it might just be useful to kind of make that person think, oh, but look, this is no different than any other candidate from the town next door, as it were. So those are just a couple of my observations. But yeah, Elona and Magdalena.
Yeah, thank you. Magdalena, would you like to tackle this first?
Yes, for me, as Jack mentioned, the Philippines, we have 2 new colleagues in the Philippines. We have the same standards for them that we have for everybody else. But what he said about the internet connection, I remember, because even in the company I worked before, Sofascore, we were hiring in the Philippines. And I remember that the main issue everybody was talking about whether the internet connection will be good enough. So it might really be from that, even though I've noticed that since we have been working the last couple of years, they have really good internet. So no issues noted.
Okay, so infrastructure is improving worldwide.
Yes.
Okay. Elona, from your perspective, it doesn't matter where a candidate is from, if they have a good curriculum. Does it really matter?
No, in our case, we have our colleagues from all around Africa, and all around the world. Again, infrastructure important, and we think well, actually, we have a lot of improvement in regard to that. There is the culture adaptation, which is very important. So you have to understand the cultural difference that you might have, but this is something that we are all aware of it, and we are professional. But no, we are at ASIS, we are worldwide, so no.
Okay, thank you so much for this one. And I want to also pay a lot of attention to Sasha's question, which is a question about culture. So for remote work companies, how do you manage to achieve team spirit and connection? Because people are not knowing themselves personally and maybe seeing each other once a year. I know for a fact that we at Native Teams try to make it our purpose to meet more. We do have one tradition event which we do. We run a marathon, but we make it so we meet each other on multiple purposes. What is the key to make team spirit, to create a culture in the remote world?
I'd love to take this one, but I can't go first again. So Elona, you can go first. Go for it.
I love this one, actually. Yeah. So we can do it both. Well, honestly, I have to say that first and foremost, when everyone is finishing their training, we have a get to know each other. So it's after 3 weeks of training, it's get to know each other. Once per month, we have a gathering, and it's an open discussion, which is not related to work only. So every month we have a catch up between each other, then on a yearly basis, which is the big party, of course, but the most important, it's having very well organized process, which is on people relationship more than professional relationship. Apart from that, at Assist, we have a small budget where the people who are working from home, we have certain places where we tend to gather them all together as a team, so they can have like coffees or drink together, not in Tirana, of course, but also in other cities, so they can get to know the team. But this is not only done on a yearly basis, this is done process-wise, is done on a monthly basis as a team, gathering all together and talking and presenting each other about what is their experience, how was their month, not work-related only, but also their life in general. And also the team leader, or also the operation manager who is leading the team, is explaining the news and how their performance and overall experience has been. So to connect them all together. And apart from that, once per 3 months, there are certain places where we gather all together and they can, let's say, face to face and this human relationship.
Thanks very much, Elona. Sounds like a great way to set up, people to get to know each other better and to create that team spirit. Magdalena, on your side, how does Sofascore do when it comes to building culture?
So for us, besides, let's say, the official team buildings that we have like normally for the company, then every department, then every team. So we actually have one person can have up to 3 buildings a year, 3 team buildings a year. My team, I think the responsibility here, besides the company, is also on the team leaders, on the managers. I think they need to support and let's say route for the team meetings, for integrating the members that are working remotely within the team, for organizing events that are possible for the remote workers to come also, and for building those connections. I think definitely that beside the company, the managers have to do their part, even without the strict procedures that the company has to have.
Yep, definitely. I agree with you on this one. We at the Demand Gen team and native teams, we have some sort of online meetings every week, which is called the Demand Gen Fun Run, when we don't necessarily discuss anything work related. We just get to know each other. Once we did karaoke. Half of the team wanted to kill me, but you know, we need to do those type of things as well. Jack, on your side?
Cool. So just a couple of things to add. I'd say first off, it has to start with the hiring process. You have to hire people that are going to sort of fit in with the culture and be the right people to have join the team in the first place. I think trying to make sure that everyone shares the same sense of mission as well is really important, because then you find that people are pulling in the same direction. They've kind of got a really strong company-wide culture, because we're all trying to achieve the best that we can achieve at the particular point in our professional careers that we are as well. So I think that's really important. You have to be quite intentional about it. The HR team or the leadership within the company really has to work hard on building culture and fostering a good culture, because it doesn't just happen. I think a podcast I listened to a couple of years ago, which was really insightful on this, was, look, if you don't work to build a culture yourself, then there's a vacuum, and a vacuum can be filled by perhaps some of those traits and things you wouldn't necessarily want to have as part of the company culture. From a more pragmatic perspective, we have a very active digital channel. So our Slack coffee room channel is always super busy, and I know in some of the employee surveys we do, people really appreciate that side of things. But we kind of try and supplement that more digital communication with the offsites as well, whether that's and sometimes that's kind of more of a defined team building thing. Sometimes that's just team members going to work together for a certain period. This year, for the first time, and well, Skirty mentioned, we also do an annual event as well. But just one event a year might be quite difficult to build relationships. But if that comes on the back of having had perhaps 2 or 3 other times of meeting people in person, that's really valuable as well. One initiative we're doing this year for the first time is hiring a couple of villas in Greece for a month, and trying to have a bunch of team members circulate through that, both in terms of individual departments within the business. But I noticed in one of our Slack channels this morning, we were putting the call out as a bit of an experiment. We're going to just have 20 random people, if you will, from different teams come together, just to kind of see how can that help with the cross-team collaboration, because I think it's easier to build collaboration within individual teams. Skirty with his Demand Gen Fun Run, although I suspect no running is involved in that. But there's also a lot to be said for having people on different teams get to know their colleagues within other parts of the business as well. So that's something that we're perhaps trying to be a bit more intentional nowadays to drive as well.
Thanks very much, Jack, about this one, and I'm personally really looking forward to that villa in Greece. We will answer the rest of the questions via email, because we have come at an end to our first panel. I would like to thank all attendees, but especially the panelists here, for providing us with huge insights of how companies perceive remote work right now, and to shed light on what might be the route that global companies and also their companies will take into the near future. Thank you, Elona. Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you, Jack. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Skirty.
Thank everyone.
It was great being here.
Thank you. Now, for the audience, I would like to introduce you with Chris Serra founder of the RemoteBase, which is a remote work success story. Chris runs one of the best digital nomad newsletters, and it's a remote entrepreneur that has built his company while traveling the world. He will be with us to share his story and make sure that we all understand that remote work is our playground. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. That is super kind. What a fantastic introduction to kick things off. I have some slides to share, so I'm gonna take everybody through some slides. So I'm gonna set that up now, and I think that should work. Let me know when you can see the presentation.
Yep, it's good.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again for the introduction. That's amazing. This is obviously the session on solopreneurship and remote work, and Skirdy has given a bit of an overview there of my background and what I'm working on right now. But for me, I wanted to try and give a title, provide a title for myself, or something that was a more representative description of the work that I'm doing, which was tough for me for this particular presentation, because this is the first time I'm actually speaking about solopreneurship and remote work. Usually when I do like public speaking or webinars, the topic is more specifically related to the business or a topic that's linked to the business that I run. And this is a bit more high level. This is like taking a step back and viewing my journey from remote work into solopreneurship. And so the most appropriate title that I think I could find was former full-time remote employee, current solopreneur. And with that in mind, I'll jump into today. And the description for this session. So this is the description for this session. The kind of poster is the remote playground, success stories and insights on solopreneurial success in the remote work landscape. But to do that, to understand that, I think first you need to understand the journey that I went on before we talk specifically about the solopreneurial aspects of what it is that I do or how I show up in that way. So first of all, I'm going to take you through a little bit of my history, my journey to where I am today. I want to be friends with you. And then after that, we can look at solopreneurship and what that is and how one does solopreneurship. And then, of course, the impact or the remote work impact on solopreneurialism. And I kind of want you to go away from this with some kind of reflective, a reflective opportunity, like an opportunity to reflect on whether or not solopreneurship is in your future or is in your team's future. So if you're here as somebody who works remotely or wants to work remotely, then of course you can look at this look at this from the view of whether or not solopreneurship might be in your path. But if you're at this session today as a remote leader, then I think that it provides an opportunity for you to think about whether or not solopreneurship could be in your team's future, and if it is or isn't, like how you change or adapt what you do to provide the best environment for them, whether or not they choose solopreneurship or not. So to dive in, I want to go all the way back to young Chris, who had a huge desire to travel and always had an entrepreneurial mindset. So this is photos of me that I have to get my family to dig out. And it's important to reference, I think, the travel aspect, because my solopreneurial journey was very, very tightly linked to my experience as a digital nomad. And those things happened at the same time for me. And so I believe that they're inherently linked. And the skills that I've developed through solopreneurship, I think are as a result of that linkage, and that'll become more clear and a little bit more obvious as to why as we move through. But the other thing to reference is that I was always kind of entrepreneurial. I was the kid that was like trying to sell sweets or chocolate at school, or like selling gadgets or toys, and always trying to make money. And as I got a little bit older, I always had like 2 or 3 different jobs, either before school or after school or at the weekend. I was always trying to do something to make money and be business savvy. And all of that led me to to what I now refer to as old Chris. So all of that work through school led me to a career initially in marketing and with different startups and scale-ups, and then eventually at my previous job, like the job that was my last job before being a solopreneur and working for myself. And this was an office-based job, and I was commuting, but the company was really, really progressive. They were very flexible and very forward-thinking. And so this gave me a big opportunity to lean into that. And this is well before the pandemic. This is like 2016. So this is before like remote work is a buzzword. And it was really powerful for me because it meant that I could access the experiences, and I'm talking here about travel, right? It meant that I could go off and travel and do the things I aspired to do when I was a kid that I couldn't really do, or that I didn't do much of when I was growing up. And that was really the starting point for new Chris, or the Chris of today. This was in 2016 when I started to explore remote work and digital nomadism, and then it just led to this like raft of experiences over the space of 5 or 6 years, starting with road trips in Portugal, motorcycle tours in Thailand, visiting friends and experiencing weddings and parties and stuff like that in places like Colombia, surfing on Christmas Day, scuba diving in the Caribbean, and taking helicopter tours around Hawaiian Islands. And all of this stuff is really, really cool and fun and exciting. And the memories mean a huge amount to me, and it makes me smile just like looking through them. But there's a bit that you don't see here, which is all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes to make those moments possible. No one sees this aspect of solopreneurship or the digital nomad lifestyle. No one sees you working at airports or working on trains. They don't see you working from a co-working space or working late from your apartment. They don't see you working late or working at meal times or working in basically any given opportunity when things need to get done. But they also don't see some of the fun aspects of it. Like these are a couple of photos that I found where I look really happy doing my work. And yeah, that's so let's say that for every 1 or 2 photos that you see of like a really happy moment or something fun and aspirational and glamorous or luxurious, there's like 4 or 5 different photos of the hard work and the effort that goes into having to make it happen. So let's talk a little bit about what I'm actually doing what am I actually doing at my laptop in these photos, right? That's maybe the question that's important, because that's what facilitates all of those great moments. Well, the job that I was doing before beginning my solopreneurial journey was with a small tax consultancy that was based in the UK. Before that, as I said, I'd worked with different startups in different marketing roles. And eventually that led me to working at this small tax company. We were helping other small businesses with their taxes. And that was great. But over time, there was a transition that happened because of this ability to work remotely and this ability to then go and travel. And that led me to the solopreneur job, which is newsletters for digital nomads. And this is part of the description, the introduction that Skirdy so kindly gave, which is the first newsletter is called RemoteBase, and we share accommodation deals for digital nomads. And the second one launched earlier this year, that's called Nomad Trip Reports. And this is like 5-minute reports on popular nomad destinations. So it's very community-based. It's written by nomads for nomads. And I think it's important to reference this a little bit and kind of zoom in on this. The business that I chose to create and develop is one that helps people access the lifestyle that I found so fulfilling as a result of remote work. And so there's a bit of a full circle moment where the lifestyle changed my life, basically. And a lot of what I do now is to help other people either start or continue their own version of that journey. And what did I learn? So what did I learn from this transition? Well, I think I learned that anybody can do this. This is something that's possible for everybody from anywhere. Because the photo that you see on the left, old Chris, and the photo that you see on the right, new Chris, I don't see so much difference in what's actually taking place. What's taking place in both photos is me at a laptop doing some work. The fundamental thing that's different is that in the first photo, the ultimate beneficiary of my efforts and my work is not really me, it's the company that I was working for, the owners of that company, the shareholders, etc. And in the photo on the right, the ultimate beneficiary really is me. It's all of the work that I'm doing boils down to some benefit for me, not anybody else. And that, I think, takes us to the question of solopreneurship and what that really is. So I wanted to kind of offer some space in the chat for people to suggest how they would just define or describe solopreneurship, and what their ideas are on that. Of course, I have my own ideas, and we're going to come on to those. But first, I wanted to give like 20 seconds to see what comes up in the chat and see. I can't actually see the chat from here, but put in what you think, because I would like to see what other people think. How do I see the chat? Here it is. Yeah, control and freedom. Interesting. And no others. That's all good. There isn't really a right or wrong answer here. And this is interesting because all of the people that I speak to, yeah, discipline, roller coaster is a good word. All the people that I speak to and all of my experiences kind of led me to boil this down to a few things, really. And they are freedom and autonomy. They're the predominant ones that seem to be the driver behind everything. Resilience is another really good answer. And the flip side of that, though, is like challenge and pressure and stress. And that's the stuff that I think you don't really see. This is the stuff that exists beneath the surface. So the freedom and the autonomy is represented by the photos that you see when people talk about this lifestyle and the cool things that they're doing, whether that's surfing at the beach or visiting friends in different places. But beneath all of that is the challenge and the pressure and the stress, because it's a lot more difficult. You're trying to essentially run an entire business operation independently, maybe with the help of some contractors, but fundamentally by yourself. But what if that wasn't necessarily the case? What if we could reduce the challenge and the pressure and the stress that's involved and optimize for more of that freedom and more of that autonomy? Well, let's talk then about how you do it. How does one do solopreneurship? And here we need to look at, I think, 3 different areas, right? Like skills and tools, kind of separate that out into more of a, what that looks like in terms of a stack, like what's the tool stack versus a skill stack. And then, of course, the link. I'm going to share what I think the link is between specifically remote work and solopreneurship based on my experiences. So first of all, when we look at skills and tools, you have to remember that there's kind of different flavors of solopreneur. There's some people might offer a service, some people might offer a product, like a physical product, some people might offer software. And there's different examples of what these look like and the specific tool stack that you might use. And remember, like tools and skills being different in the sense that tools are the things that actually help you do a thing, and skills are really just the ability to do something well, or understand or have deep understanding about something. So if you're in e-commerce, you might be selling a physical product, and you might use a tool stack like Facebook with Canva and Shopify. If you're a freelancer, you might have some kind of independent consulting service that you deliver on a one-to-one basis or on a group basis, and you might use things like Google Slides and Zoom calls and Stripe for collecting payment and stuff like that. And if you have a software company, then you might use social media and your personal network to sell that, and you'll have your own dedicated tech stack based on your technical skills to develop the actual product and sell that. But the important thing here is that no matter what flavor that you have, you have to cover all bases. You have to cover product, you have to cover marketing, you have to cover sales, you have to cover delivery, you have to kind of do a little bit of everything. For me, the tool stack is social media, so predominantly LinkedIn and Instagram, which helps me create and generate and develop my own personal network and lead to things like public speaking, and that becomes a cyclical process. With sales, I'll use Gmail or Loom for communicating async in with a bit more personality, and Calendly and Stripe, and obviously a bank account for collecting payment. But the delivery of the newsletter is always done with Beehive. That's a tool that I use to deliver the newsletter. But using Beehive doesn't mean that I'm good at sending emails. The skill is creating the email and that email being good. It's just that Beehive is the tool that I use to make it happen. So I have to highlight that tools and skills are not really the same. And that then leads us to talk about the skill stack. If we can have a tool stack for the tools that we use to actually do the thing that we want to do, what's the skill stack? What are the skills that we need to be good at, and how do we be good at them? And here I want to talk about this idea of a T-shaped individual. And then I'm going to talk about my journey from full-time employee to solopreneur, again, in a little bit more detail. And we're going to look at that, the context of solopreneurship on remote work growth and this like evolution of remote work and the boom that we've seen over recent years. So focusing on this idea of a T-shaped individual, if this isn't familiar to you, then you can think of this as a solopreneur being somebody who's like a jack of all trades, somebody who's a little bit good at everything. But the T-shaped aspect comes in that whilst you might be a little bit good at everything, you have like this deep knowledge in one area. So you can be shallow everywhere else. You can be a little bit good at product and a little bit good at marketing. But if you're really good at sales, then that's great. You'll be able to like sell lots of stuff, and of course then deliver it. And this is obviously different to working in a traditional organization where if you are just really good at marketing, that's fine, because somebody else will be really good at sales and somebody else will be really good at delivery. But as a solopreneur, it's really, really crucial to have that shallow breadth of knowledge and be good enough to do everything, even though you might have one specialism. And this, I think, I also wanted to kind of make reference here to the rise of the side hustle, so the rise of the fact that so many people now have second or third sources of income where they are really trying to do a little bit of everything in some sense. So you might be closer to this if you're an individual who is curious about solopreneurship. You might be closer to this than you think, especially if you're working remotely, which we'll come on to. So for me, my skills journey developed from working in an office to being a solopreneur step by step, because I was in the office and then I was kind of hybrid, and then I went fully remote, and then actually I went part-time. So I launched RemoteBase while I was working full-time, and that was that side hustle aspect that I had. And then it was a very slow tilting of the scale into solopreneurship. But at every single step in that process, there was this enhancement in my levels of autonomy. So my levels of autonomy grew and my levels of resilience grew as I became more autonomous. And because I had more autonomy, I had to level up my skills. I had to be better at doing the thing. I couldn't rely on tools, because tools don't make you good at doing the thing. They just help you do the thing. So I had to level up my skills. And that was kind of how my journey slowly over time developed from being in the office into full-time solopreneurship. But if we look at that in the broader context of remote work, I want to highlight like two branches that can possibly happen here, because you can be a remote worker and you can use remote work to be more autonomous and use that as a way to be more resilient, right? We see that remote teams have, or remote companies are more resilient, both on an organizational level and on an individual level. And with that autonomy comes something fresh. And for companies, often that means that employees are empowered and it drives success. So there's like increased employee satisfaction, increased retention, increased productivity. And that's great for the vast majority of people who want to be part of a wider team and work towards something as a collective. That's great, but there's always going to be a small portion of people who have these increased skills and increased levels of autonomy and increased levels of resilience, and they will want to choose to leverage that for themselves. And the other way that you can go is you can then do more freelance work or do more fractional work and have multiple clients, and then potentially go out and do full-time solopreneurship. Arguably, working freelance or working on a fractional basis is solopreneurship, and it's just it's like a sliding scale of how far you want to go down that path. So that is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways for me. Like, if you can take anything away from this session today, again, we'll go back to this idea that there's this remote playground, and this is my success story, and I'm talking about how remote work and solopreneurship are linked. And for me, the ways that they are inherently linked is that remote growth, the growth of the remote work, the remote movement is undeniable. And a really, really key factor of that is autonomy and resilience within the workforce. And ultimately, that is a catalyst for skill development. It means that people who work remotely will develop skills at a faster pace, and they will develop comfortability with autonomy, which is absolutely crucial for successful solopreneurship. And solopreneurship isn't for everyone. It's high risk, but it's high reward. But fundamentally, remote work is like a training ground for future solopreneurs. And I'd put in a note here to say that it melts the iceberg. And this is going back to that slide where you see the challenge and the pressure and the stress. Going from working for an organization, or whether that's in office or remote, fundamentally is going to take it's going to be challenging. There's going to be some pressure, and there's going to be some stress involved. But I think it's more difficult to take the leap directly from an in-office environment, because I don't think that people have as much of the autonomy and the resilience practice. Like, if this is a muscle that you build over time, remote work is a really good way to train those muscles and develop that strength to be able to go out and execute in a solopreneur environment with more of a T-shape to you as an individual. And finally, I want to talk about the flip side of this from individuals and organizations. So if you're an individual, like, I think a lot of the content here today and a lot of the way that I've spoken has been about the perspective of the individual, because I've been leaning on my experience and my transition over those years. But for organizations, I think this is really important, because you have a choice to make when you are building a remote culture, or when you're building a remote team. And the choice is to potentially limit how much autonomy and how much freedom you give, because there's, again, just like there's different flavors of solopreneurialism, there's different flavors of remote work, and some organizations are more restrictive than others, and so forth. So if you don't give autonomy, and you don't give trust, and you don't give freedom to your employees, then maybe they won't have that skill development that you want, and they won't have that resilience and autonomy that you want them to have. If you do, then there's a chance that they fall into that bracket where you have like improved success and improved productivity and on all of those things. But there is a risk. Well, it's not even a risk. I think it's almost a certainty. You have to kind of take on the assumption that a small percentage of those will break out, and they will use that increased autonomy and resilience and that increased skill development to go and follow a solopreneurial path. So I think that the future fundamentally is remote, of course, but I believe that a part of the future will be solopreneurship for a lot of people, and that's what I had to go through today. I hope that this is really useful and helpful for people. If people want to continue this conversation, obviously I think there's time for questions now, but if people want to continue this conversation online or catch up with me afterwards, like, please do that. You can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram at the newsletters and all of the obvious places, and links to all of that stuff is at chrischera.com. So you can go there and you can go there and find me and come and say hello, and otherwise we'll talk through questions now.
Thank you very, very much, Chris. A really inspiring story for everyone. I kept a lot of notes myself, because I see if I'm smart enough, I might replicate. some of the steps that you actually took to reach to where you are right now, because definitely solopreneurship is a little bit of a difficult route to take into the beginning, but also you reap a lot of rewards if you manage to do it the right way. So thank you very much for being part of the event. And now, for everyone, I would like to say that we have a short coffee break in order for us, to maybe eat a snack, maybe drink a coffee, and then we will get on a topic that everyone likes, which is around money. So let's take 5 minutes, all of us, and then we can take back on the webinar and speak about freelancer finance. Catch you later. Hello, everyone. We are back after this short break to discuss a second panel, which, as I mentioned earlier, will be about a topic that's very dear to everyone's heart, which is money. My colleague Domagoj will host a great panel about freelancer finance, and that will include a lot of explanation on how the freelancer landscape is going right now and how we can navigate taxes and how we can navigate our income through different tools and through different strategies. So I would like to invite you all to follow this panel, and I would like to introduce you with my colleague Domagoj.
Hi, everyone. Always look bad on cameras. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Well said. Firstly, you said that we're going to talk about the topic that we all like, about money, of course. So as for now, I see that Krasimir is here and Predrag. Those are both participants. They should participate. Jovi is still not here, so I'm not sure whether we should wait for like 10 more minutes for the schedule, or maybe we can start.
And I believe we can start, and then Jovi will jump on the way.
Okay, so let's start. Let's start from the beginning. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Domagoj Čančer. I'm a senior tax consultant and the native teams, and I welcome you to today's panel discussion on freelance finance, a topic of growing importance in our modern economy. As traditional employment models evolve, freelancing is becoming a significant force in shaping our economy. We've gathered a panel of experts who will share their insights and strategies to help us navigate the financial aspects of freelance work. But before we dive into the discussion, let me take a moment to introduce our respected panelists. Our first speaker will be Predrag Popović, a founder of Popović Legal, an independent law office that offers innovative legal solutions to its clients. Predrag primarily focuses on corporate and commercial law with an emphasis on agreements related to development, commercialization, and maintenance of business services, with a strong accent on counseling clients, including growing businesses and startup. We also have Krasimir Angelov, the CFO at Native Teams. Krasimir is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certificated Accountants in the UK. Having a Big Four financial background, he brings more than 11 years of experience in auditing, consultancy, and financial management to the table. So we will introduce Jovi later when he shows up. So together, our panelists will bring a diverse range of perspectives and expertise to shed light on the versatile nature of freelance finance and legal perspective. So from taxation and legal framework to financial planning and investment strategies, we aim to uncover practical tips and actionable advice to empower freelancers in managing their finances effectively. So now without any further ado, let's dive into our discussion on freelance finance and explore how freelancers can thrive financially in today's dynamic landscape. So first question for Krasimir. Krasimir, in the bustling world of freelancing, tax management stands as a crucial pillar for financial success. Freelancers often grapple with the question, how can they optimize their tax management to legally maximize their income and minimize their tax liabilities? Obviously, it's a complex puzzle that demands attention and expertise, right?
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to be part of the discussions and to participate and contribute to the topics that we're discussing. If we can start and can go one step back into the substance of freelance work, of course, you running your own freelance practice or being a freelancer or remote worker, it's something that brings a lot of freedom. I mean, it's exciting for people because they have the freedom to select. The working hours, their own boss. They're selecting sometimes the clients and the projects they work on. And this is one of the reasons also that more and more people are turning into freelancing. However, freelancing comes also with a part of challenging. Not everything is great and exciting, and not everything is like the shiny part of what we can see, and all the process being a freelancer or a remote worker. There are some challenges, and these challenges we're going to talk also more from financial and tax perspective, because these challenges they could be, I mean, from firstly to negotiate, to find the right job, to find the right employer, to have the security, because sometimes it may not be always in place. And in more financial aspect, I mean, it is, for me at least, it is natural that most of the freelancers, they're not focusing that much on the taxes and the financial part. Of course, taxes and are not necessarily the most sexiest thing in the work, in the freelancing work, but it's something which is essential, and it's obligatory, and it's part of the responsibility that every freelancer and every person who is having income to have this obligation to properly report and to stay compliant from tax perspective. And especially for new freelancers who are accustomed to have the employer behind them, they're not used to have this obligation to take care of and to be on top of the taxes and the taxation for their income. So for them, it may be more challenging, this switch from being employed as an employee and then becoming self-employed, because then the responsibility, the financial responsibility for compliance, it's much greater than before that, when they have the employer taking care of all these responsibilities. So yeah, talking about this dynamic world of freelancing, I mean, about the positive side being autonomous and flexible, then tax management is definitely a challenge. And I mean, for all freelancers, they could be graphic designers or writers, consultants, any other profession, they need to navigate in this complex landscape of tax regulations. It often comes from the fact that I mean, freelancers, they're based on coming from different countries, which leads to the fact that they need to be on top of they need to be informed about the local tax requirements and tax obligations and the tax jurisdictions, and to realize their obligation to properly report their income. So going back to the topic about optimizing tax management, this is something that incorporates two topics. I mean, firstly, of course, I mean, the freelancers, they're focused on maximizing how much income they can get from their employers or their clients. On the other side, in order to maximize your income, we usually look at as a net income as let's say, the main benchmark and the main goal for the freelancers. And maximizing the net income, it means that also they should utilize and use all the tools available to use all the tax allowances and tax deductions, so that they can leverage all these resources to legally maximize income with minimizing their tax liabilities. This, of course, requires a deep understanding of the tax laws. It requires diligent keeping of all kinds of documents and receipts, and in general, all the record keeping and of all documentation. Yeah, so in many cases, it leads to the question of the freelancers, how can they legally optimize their tax management and they can maximize their income. So, I mean, some of the fundamental topics and the things that they should know is, I mean, firstly, they should understand their tax obligation. They should familiarize themselves with the tax laws and regulations which are specifically applicable for their jurisdiction. This includes also understanding which taxes they are responsible for, like income tax or self-employment tax or other taxes. And also essential is to know the deadlines for filing and paying taxes, because usually if you don't have the focus on the taxes side, it is highly probable that you may miss the deadlines, and you realize when it's too often, or behind the deadline, and probably you may be liable to pay certain fee or penalty to the tax authorities. As mentioned briefly earlier, accurate records, they're also essential to be kept for both income and expenses. This means any kind of invoices, receipts, contracts. All of these documentation should be kept safe and for a long period of time. It also depends in different jurisdictions, but these documentation are required in case of any tax audits or inspections, so that they should not be, let's say, destroyed or thrown away. Another topic is just to understand and to maximize the tax deductions in each of the jurisdictions the freelancers are working. Generally, tax deductions are all business-related expenses like office expenses, professional fees, travel-related costs, health insurance, and so on. Also, freelancers should be aware of the non-taxable allowances and benefits. It could be meal allowance, daily allowance, gifts for children in some of the countries, and so on. Another important topic is to emphasize on the fact that they should separate personal and business finances. It is common for some people, I mean, some self-employed people to just to act as a one individual, like having business and personal at one place, having the same bank account, using the credit card. It is not the right thing, it's not the best thing to do in this situation, because it makes your life much more difficult, because end of the day, you need to keep to look at yourself, I mean, from self-employed and like a freelancer side as a business, like a self-employed individual, and you need to treat you as a business. So all the personal accounts, all the personal spendings should be done separately from the business-related ones. Another thing is that could be utilized and could be really helpful is to utilize tax software or professional advice from tax professionals. In this area, also native teams can play a good role. We're having a platform and we have this tax management functionality. So for an individual case, we can provide advice for what would be also from tax perspective the best option for the freelancers and the individuals to decide how they want to structure their setup, also to emphasize on the tax compliance and also to maximize the net income. Another aspect I want to mention is about the business structure, because choosing the right business structure is also something essential. It's having significant implications for the freelancers because, I mean, many freelancers, they operate as solopreneurs or sole proprietors, forming an LLC but forming an LLC or S corporation, for example, can offer them a tax advantage, and they may be having more favorable tax result. I mean, their income after all the tax calculations could be more favorable, and this structure makes it better for their needs from tax perspective. And yeah, lastly, but last but not the least is, I mean, just to have the mindset to stay updated all the time. I mean, no matter whether they're located, no matter in which industry they're working for, staying updated with all regulations, it is essential, because regulations and rules and laws, they can change frequently. So if you don't keep track and if you're not up to date, then you're exposing yourself to a higher risk of being incompliant, and this is not a situation, I mean, most of the freelancers want to end. Of course, using proper consultancy also could be really helpful if you want to focus more on your activity and your business, not that much on the financial and tax side, or if you don't feel comfortable or confident that you can manage with the technical side of the managing your finances and managing your tax management.
Thank you. Thank you, Krasimir. Well explained. So in meantime, Jovi has joined us. Jovi, you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So let me just introduce our third speaker, Jovi O. Jovi is a managing director of the Banking as a Service at Unlimit. Jovi, as a fintech professional with over 18 years of experience in the financial industry, developed and implemented Unlimit's banking-as-a-service solutions that enable businesses, companies, and brands to offer innovative financial products. So how about we start with a question immediately? Jovi, you up for it?
Go for it. Thank you.
Okay, so among the ebbs and flows of the income, freelancers tend to seek stability. So here, banking-as-a-service platforms step in to offer the solutions. How can banking-as-a-service help freelancers manage income volatility and ensure financial stability?
Sure. Thank you. And again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I had a bit of a slight technological snafu, hence late and the lack of the background. But thank you so much. It was a very good introduction. So again, I'm Jovi O, and I head Unlimit's BaaS API solution. And it's an interesting question, the life of a freelancer, who would want it? You know, it's a very demanding and challenging and it's a tough environment to operate in. A lot of the boomers, they say, oh, you're a freelancer. They think it's you just being lazy, but it takes a certain personality to want to go out and do things by yourself and for yourself. So it's always, always good to applaud the individual. And obviously with that, and one of the reasons why it can be so challenging is, as you mentioned, the income volatility that comes with being a freelancer. And when we were looking at developing a BaaS solution, my North Star, my driving star is always the client and then the customer. How can we develop innovative solutions, or how can we partner with innovative companies to help make people's lives easier? And we live in a very tough world, right? We live in a very tough world. What can we do? How can fintech help make people's lives easier? And from a freelancer perspective, I always give the example of, imagine you're a freelancer, okay, and you're on a small boat out to sea. You're rowing your boat, and some months, when you go to catch fish, it's generous. You can fill your bag, and other times the sea is empty, no fish. So it can be feast or famine. There are some months you're stuffed. There are some months that you are starving, and this is where I think BaaS comes into play, because BaaS essentially can act, as a sea captain. If we're going to use the sea analogy, I don't know where I'm going with this, but BaaS can act as a sea captain, and it can guide you through choppy waters, and it can guide you through calm waters, because we have information and we have data. And data is very, very important. And you will find that a lot of BaaS platforms have and has the ability to come equipped with the ability to have financial forecasting. So think of the financial forecasting like, a weather radar. It could predict when there are storms, i.e. your link periods as a freelancer, and it can predict when it's sunny and calm, months when it's profitable for you in your financial landscape. So having the data to have this financial forecast in the BaaS product is critical to manage the volatility of income. And a lot of people throw in AI, and yes, AI can be used, but if used correctly, again, it can be a powerful tool. And why is that? Because AI incorporated into a BaaS platform that gives you, the freelancer, to manage, your forecasting, it allows you, and it can guide you when to save, right? When to store. So as an example, it may detect that you have months when you get a lot of clients, a lot of work coming in. So that's a good time for you to expend. And it can predict months, when, for example, your invoices don't come in. So it can say, these are the times when you need to save. It can automate savings during prosperous times, and it can ensure that the freelancer is not caught off guard when times are choppy, when times are low. So that strategic planning ensures that, like a lightning house guiding the ships to safety, you're always moving towards financial stability, regardless of how temperamental the waters are. And again, it is vitally critical that as a freelancer, you have the ability to anticipate when income is going to be high and low. And you don't want to have that at the forefront of your mind. You want to have a solution where, for example, you can plug in some data, it can analyze the retrospective history and predict giving you the ability to plan and I guess to have an easier life. So that's one aspect, one way that BaaS can help the ebbs and flows when it comes to managing volatility for freelancers.
Thank you for sharing that. That was mindful. So yeah, let's hop on to the legal side. Predrag.
Yeah. Hi everyone.
You're here with us.
Yeah.
Hi. So
hi everyone. It's
Predrag,
nice to be here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. So let's start with the legal perspective. So the navigating the legal terrain is equally important for freelancers. So from establishing business entities to hiring subcontractors, what legal requirements and implications should freelancers be mindful of?
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. Secondly, I would like to thank to our previous panelists because they have mentioned some of the issues that I will be discussing in a couple of minutes, in the next couple of minutes. So one of the most important thing to think about is to actually separate your legal, so to say, protection or liability from liability in sense of a company. Basically, what you want to do is to protect your own personal assets. And in order to do that, the most appropriate way is to actually create a separate legal entity, which will basically serve as a vehicle for your job and what you want to provide as your services. So basically, when it comes to establishing business entities, rules and regulations are strictly related to your relevant jurisdiction. It means that each and every jurisdiction and every country has its own rules when it comes to establishing whether sole proprietorship or some type of a company. Of course, when you want to establish a certain type of a company or a business entity, there will be some documents that you will have to present to business registry in order to create your own entity. So the main difference between sole proprietorship and a company is how you navigate your personal liability. If you are registered as a sole proprietor, then you are fully liable for any damages or any costs that may occur. This means that basically your client, if something goes bad, can actually attack your own personal assets, your home, your house, etc. But if you have a company, then you have some kind of a separation between your personal liability and a liability of a company. So that's one of the most important implications that everyone should have in mind when it comes to providing services, whether a freelancer, or as someone who opens and creates an entity. When it comes to basically the topic of subcontractors, we have to be mindful of several things and topics. So basically, we have to be very mindful of contractual obligation. So first of all, as you gain some kind of a client, you have to have a clear... No, I thought we had some technical difficulty. Okay, so when you establish a cooperation with your client, it is the best to have this cooperation regulated by some kind of agreement or contract. And if you want to, in a way, some of your responsibilities pass to your subcontractor, it is important to see whether this agreement or contract with your client allows you to do so. If this contract allows you to do so, then you might be also, then you can, of course, delegate some of the responsibilities and job to your subcontractor. But still, there is some very important information that you have to bear in mind when it comes to engaging with subcontractor. First, we come to the topic of liability. If something goes bad, and if you engage a subcontractor and he or she does not deliver something that is his or her responsibility, you as a freelancer would be completely responsible for his lack of production or delivering something that was agreed upon. So if your subcontractor fails to meet certain expectations, standards, and obligation, you might be potentially liable to certain damages and legal claims. Also, some of the things that you have to bear in mind is also how will be the intellectual property handled. So if your subcontractor creates some kind of intellectual property, you have to be fully aware whether he or she would transfer you some rights, and which specifically rights when it comes to using those IPs. Also, you have to bear in mind that there are some important issues when it comes to privacy and data security. And if your work involves handling sensitive data or personal information, you have to ensure that your subcontractors also adhere to the data protection regulation and all relevant laws when it comes to data protection. Also, you have to bear in mind the trade secret protection, also the non-compete and NDAs. If you have some kind of a agreement signed with your client that regulates some trade secrets, or you may come into possession of certain trade secrets, you will be obliged to protect them, and also your subcontractor will have to adhere to this protection. If he or she in some way discloses any of those information, you may be liable to certain legal damages. Also, you have to bear in mind the employment law. Basically, in some of the countries or some jurisdictions, if you engage with some subcontractor, you might be triggering some obligations that are that could be your relationship with that subcontractor could be construed as a work-related agreement or connection. So in that sense, you have to be in mind that there are some minimum wage requirements, some tax withholding, workers' compensations, other benefits, etc. So that's if you do not adhere to this regulation, you might be liable to financial regulation, and of course to financial authorities. In the end, we can say that one of the most important things is to bear in mind that there might be some regulatory compliance, in the sense that in specific industries, it is important to have this regulation of subcontracting relationship. So you have to fully act in accordance with those specifics when it comes to a specific industry.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you, Predrag. So yeah, that was great. We're gonna go back to the Krasimir, to the financial part. So Krasimir, investors explore avenues to streamline their operations. Many of them consider leveraging e-citizenships and EOR record, right, services. So these services they offer promising benefits, but yet they come with their own set of challenges. So what would you say, what are the potential benefits and challenges of utilizing e-citizenships or EOR services for freelancers?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Domagoj. Firstly, I wanted just to mention, I mean, that also what Predrag mentioned is really helpful, and I really don't think it should be discouraging to freelancers, but I would promote it that they should be informed about all the aspects when in the freelancer work. It could be financial, legal, or as Jovi mentioned, financial planning. All these are essentially if they want to survive in this dynamic world. So yeah, it may seem boring, but it's something which is really important and can help everyone that is into freelancing or planning to turn in and to join the freelancing world. Yeah, about the benefits, getting back to the topic, benefits and challenges of utilizing and e-citizenship and employment of record services. So yeah, we can see them in couple of directions. I mean, these are strategies which are, I mean, gaining traction in the latest years. Also considering with the increased amount of remote work, digital nomads, and freelancing in general worldwide. And they're offering, of course, benefits because these solutions they offer, they're actually enabling the freelancers to establish a legal presence in foreign countries and to navigate the complex international employment regulations properly. So this is something which opens a lot of doors, let's say, and it gives a lot of benefits. One of the main benefits, in my opinion, is the global accessibility. This is, I mean, e-citizenship enables freelancers to work internationally without having the actual physical presence, which essentially opens and expands their market reach. And then they, as we also, it was mentioned on the topics of the remote work and office work in the beginning of the webinar, it's something that gives you opportunity I mean, gives opportunities on the employer side and also in the freelancer side. On the employer side, it gives them opportunity to select the best talent for the certain position and the role and the function for the employer. And it removes the boundaries of the localization that they used to have, let's say, in the more traditional setup. And on the other side, for the freelancer and the employees, it gives them the opportunity to have direct reach to worldwide, I mean, potential employers or their customers worldwide. So it's basically removing the boundaries of, let's say, keeping local. Another benefit is streamlining administration. As we also touched this topic, I mean, freelancers and remote workers, they usually they embrace the freedom and autonomy, and administration is not their favorite topic. So this is something that e-citizenship and employment of record services could help to simplify these topics and to ensure tax compliance and legal documentation to be properly prepared and submitted, timely submitted also, and this way to free up time, to free time up for the freelancers to focus on their core activities, to focus on what they are doing on a daily basis or what they're developing, a product or something else to their customers. So yeah, this is also leads to the topic in general for the legal compliance that the employment of record services they can ensure and they can help to the freelancers to follow the local labor laws, and this way to reduce the potential legal issues if, for example, they don't feel comfortable to handle and to follow up on the legal topics themselves. Of course, they can utilize legal assistance and coming from an external provider. Talking about employment of record services, it is something that can offer different benefits, such as healthcare or insurance to the employees, something which may not be present if they're having different setup. For example, if they're having their own business entities, and just it gives them more opportunities to gain better benefits, which are closer, let's say, to the benefits from the regular employment relationships. And in general, yeah, about the risk mitigation, employment of record services can help freelancers to navigate the international, I mean, transactions and legal disputes, because a lot of also looking on the payment side, there's a lot of cross-border payments and international payments, and there's a huge, I mean, potential or considerable potential for disputes, depends on the transaction. So having employment of record provider behind you, it's something that can really help you to actually to mitigate and to reduce this risk. On the other side, in terms of challenges, or not always challenges, but let's say what are the not that positive, let's say, sides. I mean, of course, all these services, they cost money, and all these fees, I mean, all these services are coming with certain fees. So of course, it's something that is directly impacting the freelancer's income, or something which is their primary focus in the first place when, for example, they start to work as freelancers. That's why it is important for them to get to know and to be well informed in the beginning when they start their let's say individual practice, just to be aware of all the aspects and everything that may impact their financial income. I mean their income from their relationship with their customers or employers. Yeah, in terms of complexity, in case that there are multiple e-citizenships, it could bring certain amount of complexity, especially it involves diverse legal framework. I mean, different countries and different jurisdictions, it could be definitely complex for the freelancers to navigate all these jurisdictions. Employment of record arrangements sometimes limit the flexibilities of the freelancers. If we go to the, I mean, there's, let's say, different levels of flexibility and autonomy that the freelance can have in different arrangements with employment of record providers, or either having individual legal entities. So being employed to employment of record, it could restrict, of course, some of the aspects, and it may reduce the flexibility compared to if you're like a regular freelancer. There could be challenges also in terms of language and communication, cultural barriers. It's a challenge which is present everywhere. I mean, talking about international work and talking about freelancing, digital nomading. This is something that is I think it's getting less and less a challenge, because I mean, in view of all the globalization and all the access and all the barriers that have been removed over the years and all the technology that is actually enabling to remove these barriers, I think all these differences can be properly mitigated. And of course, the regulatory risks, they're always in place. It's, I mean, freelancers, they may face regulatory risks in jurisdictions when they're not too familiar in them. So it should be always they should be mindful about the companies and the countries and jurisdictions that they're operating in.
Yeah, thank you, Krasimir. So I would continue with a similar topic. We're going to go back to Jovi. So Jovi, banking as a service platforms, not only they assist in income management, but also facilitate access to digital services like e-citizenships and EORs, empowering freelancers to work globally. So how does banking as a service enhance freelancers' ability to manage financial and administrative tasks efficiently?
Thank you. So it's very interesting to be on a panel because, you know, yes, I'm talking, but listening to my fellow panelists, and I'm learning an awful lot. And so many complexities, so many red tapes, so many bureaucracies. And I've always said, and I will continue to say, is that, you know, banking as a service, as a product, is complementary to solutions that solve this particular problem. So again, you have companies such as Native Teams, who are a fantastic product that offers a suite of solutions and services that addresses a lot of the issues that have been raised today. And as a BaaS provider, you know, we serve merely as a complementary add-on to that. You know, but if you break down how banking as a service will enhance freelancers' ability to manage their financial and admin tasks, you know, we can start, for example, with streamlined, you know, global income management. You know, because excuse me, on the income front, you know, BaaS, you know, and everyone says a one-stop shop, but BaaS can act like a financial Swiss Army knife for freelancers. It doesn't just monitor the ebbs and flows of income, it can anticipate them, it can react to them, and then through sophisticated algorithms, through AI, and I say that, you know, not in jest, but once deployed properly, through algorithms and AI, it can offer personalized dashboards, and the freelancers can essentially visualize their financial income and their health in real time. They can plan for irregular income patterns, for example. They can gain access to financial products, and it's all hyper personalized to their specific needs. So it's like having your own personalized financial advisor in your application or on your web application 24/7, who understands you, who understands your lifestyle, who understands your income to the very last pound, penny, or cent in euro. So that is, is crucial. Secondly, again, BAS, we love to partner with innovative companies and companies that can provide access to global markets, as your fellow panelists have mentioned, through e-citizenships and through EOR services. So on the digital side, BAS platforms can serve as the bridge, over traditional barriers of international work, and again, there are an awful lot. So as we've mentioned, e-citizenship, EOR services, it breaks down these complexities of working across borders, and it gives freelancers a digital identity, essentially, and an employment framework that spans multiple continents. And what does it mean for a freelancer? Where's the benefit? Simply, a freelancer can legally work, for example, in Estonia. They can bill their clients in the US. They can spend their earnings in Thailand, but be aware of some of the bars there, because you never know what you may get. But all without the admin headaches, that typically accompanies all these endeavors and freedoms. So again, it's the equivalent of holding that golden ticket, that gives you access to a world where markets, borders are blurred, and opportunities are boundless. And that's one of our tag phrases, at Unlimit. We say a borderless payment, because the world truly is becoming borderless. Let's say, let's talk about enhanced admin efficiency. BAS, again, working with and in collaboration with innovative companies, it can simplify the mess of admin tasks, and there is a lot of admin tasks that comes with freelancers. I think we know, from invoicing clients in multiple currencies to navigating international tax laws. I'm not a tax lawyer, but my goodness, even in the UK, just managing my tax affairs is a headache, let alone if it spanned multiple geographies. So that's a complete headache. But BAS platforms can ultimately automate and it can simplify the processes that really consume the valuable time and effort and mental resources and energy from a freelancer perspective. Imagine the peace of mind that comes from knowing all your invoices are sent out on time. It's automated, you have follow-ups, they're scheduled, all your cross-border transactions are compliant with local regulations. Again, it's like having a virtual PA who's fluent in every language, who's fluent in every customs, who's fluent in every law. Again, we want to remove the friction that comes with payments, and we want to remove the friction that comes with working and operating in a borderless environment. Again, BAS, our solution, as other BAS providers, can be deployed by APIs. So that means we are able to seamlessly integrate with other digital tools and applications. And it doesn't just stop with financial management. Our platform can integrate seamlessly with, accountancy platforms such as, let's say, Intuit, project management software, tax preparation applications. This ecosystem of interconnectedness services creates a streamlined workflow where all the financial and administrative tasks are not only more manageable, which is key, but also accurate and, again, less time-consuming, removing away friction from this process. And it creates a holistic approach for the freelancer that turns, I guess, disorganized chaos, into a harmony of productivity and efficiency. So those are a few of the many ways where BAS can help out.
Thank you, Joey, for this. We're gonna go back to Predrag now to hear some legal stuff. So Predrag, freelancers, they engage with clients and third parties. Of course, protecting themselves from liability becomes paramount. Protecting themselves from liability becomes paramount for them, right? So how can freelancers shield themselves in the event of some kind of disputes or any legal claims?
Thank you for this question. So one of the best ways to protect yourself is actually to have a set of very clear terms under which you will provide certain services. This would actually mean that you either have pre-prepared terms and conditions, or you have a signed agreement, some kind of a contract, or a written email in which certain aspects of your cooperation with your client are regulated. So one of the topics that you have to cover in this type of regulation is basically the scope of work, including the topics that are related to specific industry. For example, if you are some kind of a designer, then you have to, for example, regulate the number of revisions that would be included as a regular service. Also, you have to define the deadlines or a timetable for certain steps, phases of delivering certain products or your work, something that is related to your work. Also, some of the topics that you would have to regulate are the fees and payment terms, indemnification clause, which is very important in order to limit your liability, especially the financial damages that you might be opening yourself in certain situations. Also, the communication and handling disputes. Within this clause that regulate the handling of disputes, you can also regulate the usage of certain alternative dispute resolutions, such as negotiation, such as discussion, or some kind of a mediation, arbitration. And if all that fails, then regulate certain aspects that are related to court, to the protection of your rights and responsibilities in front of the court. So there are a lot of topics, and this isn't a finished list of topics that should be regulated in this legal terms, but just the general list. And when it comes to specifically talking about an industry or something like that, it is always recommendable to seek any advice from an attorney who knows how to regulate certain aspects of your cooperation with your client. So you have to be engaging with an attorney who is experienced in this kind of freelance work, and of course has a relevant knowledge in the field of the specific industry.
Okay. Thank you, Predrag. So as we're getting close to an end, I see that we have at the webinar chat, we had a question from Angela. Angela Maneska asked, I heard Native Teams offers this entity option in the UK. Can you explain more, please? So this would be suitable for Krasimir, right?
Yes, I can advise on this question. Yeah, it is actually one of the service offerings of Native Teams. We're offering this as an option for us to facilitate the process and to help to establish, to incorporate the entity, and afterwards to handle the administration and to help also with the accounting and the tax side. So shortly, I say it is something that Native Teams is offering, and anyone that could consider it could be an option. I would encourage you just to obtain professional advice from our colleagues, to get in touch with the Native Teams representative, and to schedule a meeting to obtain more information for the specific case, and then to receive proper advice of what would be the best solution for the specific case of the individual.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I guess as we run out of time, this would be all for today. I would like to thank everyone for joining today's discussion on freelance finance, and also many thanks to our expert participants, Krasimir, Predrag, and Jovi. As for that, you can always contact them through the LinkedIn. You can find them if you have any further questions. And yeah, until next time, may your earnings increase and your financial knowledge expand. Stay strong, stay motivated, and keep pursuing your dreams. So goodbye for now, and yeah, see you in the next part of our journey together. And we're back to Skerdi.
Thank you very, very
Hello,
much,
everyone.
Domago, and all of the participants. I definitely took a lot of notes when it comes to the, let's say, the freelancer landscape, how to navigate not only the finance, but also how to navigate the legal perspective, which is something that I really lack. I don't understand much about legal. They look like a foreign language to me, even if I read it in my own native language. But after this webinar, I know all of the good questions that I need to ask from my lawyer and from my legal team. So thanks very much to all of the participants for a great webinar. Now, to jump to another, let's say, section of our lives that the remote movement has actually touched upon, and it has changed, and it has made a revolution out of it. I would like to introduce the audience with Andreas Wil GERDES, a mentor of mine, a dear friend of mine, and we together will be speaking on a fireside chat about the remote revolution on education and family bonds. Welcome, Andreas, and it's always a pleasure having you.
Same here. Thanks for having me.
As one of the remote movement thought leaders, what would you say is the biggest thing that has changed in the way that people consume knowledge?
I think the most fundamental change is people have woken up to the fact that the factory schooling model, which we tried out for the last 150 years, actually expired. So I think there's a significant wake-up call globally when it comes to people realizing that they do not need state-supported curriculums or state-organized daycare for their children, that they actually realize that children love to learn and information is available in most places, and the real connection to nature and to the outdoors in combination to knowledge is crucial. And that's thanks to what you call the remote situation. I would call it more the telecommunications, because ultimately what we are doing, we communicate over distances. And if you look into the basics of the word telecommunications, this is what it is. Yeah, so you call it remote, not remote. I found those words confusing because most people I know who actually work under your terminology remotely actually enjoy doing this in co-working places and in other setups. So they're actually not as remote as the name might wrongly suggest. Like homeschooling is not at home and remote is not lonely. Yeah, so and those things are actually, the terminology is not, or is misleading. So to answer your question, I believe the major wake-up call is that people on the large scale are now exploring alternative options like micro schools, homeschools, world schools, and empower the kids to learn how to learn and then follow the information as it is available. So the idea of having textbooks and school books approved by education ministries and governments is widely disappearing. The growth rates in certain parts, as an example of the US, per year is 100%, and those things have been unheard of before.
Okay, thank you very much. When it comes to world schooling, this is a concept that, let's say if I asked my parents, they would know nothing about. So would you like, for example, to break it down a little bit for me and for the participants? What would world schooling mean?
World schooling is, we had factory schools in the last 150 years where governments told you what the right school book is, and they came up with a curriculum. They employed mostly frustrated teachers to tell you that you have to be excited at 8 o'clock in the morning to learn what they told you should learn. So it was anything but human-centric. Homeschool is often used as a terminology which is most widely recognized around the world as a movement where people take the leadership on the education themselves and organize micro schools and others. The world schooling is a subsection of that, if you want to use it. I think the simplest definition is that they include the perspective of looking at the world as a classroom and say, you know what, traveling can be included, but you actually open your mindset towards what happens around the world. And you can do this by factually traveling or virtually traveling, by being in group sessions, which includes people from different continents. Yeah, so as an example, there is one session which includes a 10-year-old guy from India, and he's one of the most refreshing in that group of 8, 9 who learn together. And by just having access to his daily pattern and what he experiences, this is logically eye-opening, and it gives you perspective to the world. So in a nutshell summary, world schooling is the definition of considering the world as your classroom. And this can be based on you traveling with your children, and this can be physical travel. This can be just spending 6 months somewhere. And instead of learning Spanish in a classroom, you hopefully have the luxury of working remotely, using that terminology, and then you can go to a Spanish-speaking country. So your kids will pick it up because they see it everywhere, and they pick it up because they want to play with the local kiddos and understand more how they tick. Then you're really motivated to learn them. You learn at a light speed.
You mentioned a couple of keywords that I would like to follow up upon. When it comes to world schooling itself, you mentioned traveling, you mentioned having maybe the luxury of working remotely, as we say it as in this terminology. But how easy would it be for, let's say, the vast majority of people to adapt to this model? Because we know and we understand that this model might be very very interesting and very innovative for us, but we also need to understand what are the capabilities and possibilities that people have to do it. How easy would it be for a family, for example, to world school their children?
You use the word vast majority. It will not work for the vast majority. But you know what? The vast majority, when I was born early enough to be part of digital mobile phones, the majority, if I would have told them at the time, use a digital mobile phone for 99% of your phone calls, they would have just run for the hill. Yeah, because they had their phone at home, they had a phone in the office, they had their phone in their vacation home, etc. They would not resign from that ever. Yeah, unheard of. So it doesn't work. So the vast majority, I believe, will not get it. But the vast majority has children and doesn't want to have children. Don't forget. Ample people love to get rid of their children and drops them in a concrete box in the morning, probably called a kindergarten, and then they go to another concrete box themselves. And they rather send their wife to work to make some money to pay another woman to raise their children. So that's what the vast majority does. And I don't think that will be compelling for the vast majority, because they rather go on a vacation to actually get away from the life which they normally live, but that's sufficient for them. For the people who want to do it, it's powerful. Kids love to learn. That's what I experienced. They don't want to have holidays. They love to learn every day. They don't stop asking questions, and they're really excited. So look at a guy called George Land, L-A-N-D, George Land. George Land did a NASA study, or on behalf of NASA, this was in the last century, and looked at what does it take to be genius. So what does it take to come up with creative ideas, solutions all the time? And he figured out that actually pre-kindergarten, the kids are most open-minded and actually significantly more creative and problem-solving empowered than the most adults are. And he figured out that gradually, from a 98% tested kids, kindergarten and pre-kindergarten age, tested at genius level when it comes to problem solving and creativity, it goes gradually down to 10% when you finish with your factory schooling model. Yeah, so what that tells you, if you do not put them into this forced model, but let them learn at their pace and focused on them instead of having a model which has to fit all. Yeah, so I remember I was pre-teenage, but I was very tall. And I was supposed to run as fast as possible and compete against the guys who were half my size. And I told the sport teacher, it doesn't make sense to me. Why should I do that? So I rather run long distance or whatever, but I'm not kind of on sprint. But this was not acceptable for him. So I just decided to not do it. But even that was not acceptable for him. To have an argument with a school teacher and say, it doesn't make sense what you are doing, and I won't do it because it doesn't feel right, was something which allowed me to realize early that I left that kind of factory schooling formal education and focused on learning the things I really enjoy learning, and that's great fun. And you see that kids love to learn, number one. If we support them in learning what they want to learn, that is super powerful. And those models, as I said, if you look at the clusters, which we look at remote working hubs around the world, they are now homeschooling, microschooling, world schooling groups. And the kids are growing and growing, and all age groups together. Or in the #1 TED Talk, if you look at the most viewed TED Talk, it's from Ken Robinson. and dealing with the issue of schools destroying creativity. And so it's the simplest summary in that TED Talk. If you look at that, this is probably why it's the most watched TED Talk, but it just explains how the idea of being in a room with 20, 30 people your age is some of the most absurd examples of human design. So it doesn't empower children, it actually disempowers children and creates humans who might follow orders. But you know what? That is expired, and in the remote work community and different hubs, it's growing like crazy. And in the general population, as an example, in the US, in certain areas, it's growing by 100% per year. So the numbers are going up. People woke up through COVID and through the fact that they actually spend more time with their kids than they ever did before.
And I want to also continue this line of thought when it comes to spending time with the children. I know that you're a father, and I know that you spend a lot of time with your kids. How has, let's say, this movement or the changes that are happening in the worldwide landscape improved, or what has been happening with your family bonds following the recent changes in the world?
Put it this way: with the transition which we have right now is much bigger. So it's from a work-centric life design to a life-centric life design. So people are able to organize their life around life and not around work. So they don't have to move to a city, they don't have to move to a factory. Those scenarios are pretty much expired. So this allows you to operate a different life. And yes, obviously, if you want to have children, it allows you to spend more time with children. And what you can see that people then often work remotely for, let's say, a company in Germany and work and live in the Western Balkans somewhere where people still love to have children and where the playgrounds are full of kids and not of dogs. Now, if you go to Germany, it's more dogs than kids at playgrounds. And then they work 2 or 3 days or 4 days per week, but they spend jointly a lot of time with their children and contribute and volunteer time in those micro-schooling models. And so that is what I see. The people who consciously, based on the life-centric architecture, want to have children, they make an effort and to combine better places with a remote work opportunity where they find home and world schooling hubs, and that leads to happy parents and happy children.
Thank you very much for this one. And you mentioned a little bit, people being from Germany, but spending time into the Balkans a little bit earlier. You as a nomad traveler, and also your nomad family, you move from location to location. What do you see on this region that resonates with you, and why do you choose to spend significant amount of time in the Balkans throughout the year?
I left Germany very early through being involved in digital communication that became highly popular in the 1990s in Asia. So I was able to go to places where I could make a difference. Or I was in my 20s and with a few years experience, kind of a world expert on GSM because it was a brand new subject. So, and I like to be in places where quality of life is supported. And so this brought me into the Mediterranean. And now, yes, the Western Balkan has great places. And as I said, it has playgrounds with children. So the average age, look at the European statistics. So if you look at Kosovo, Albania, the average age is 20 plus. Go to Germany, it's 50 plus, it's close to 60 in certain parts of East Germany. So if you want to hang out in an environment where people have more adult diapers than baby diapers, then good luck. It's your choice. I love to be in environments where I find it stimulating that there are young people who want to actually impact and want to grow and want to learn and want to positively impact the world. I find that by far more interesting than talking to, sadly enough, often mainly grumpy people who are biologically my age, but who have an attitude which is corresponding to their age. Yeah, and so I always use the terminology that I like to hang out with kids, and you find kids of all ages. It's an attitude of keeping your curiosity and your creativity alive and looking at what's possible instead of telling you all the things which don't work. So, and that is an attitude which is powerful. And you find that in areas where you have a significant portion of people, or where the average age is lower, and people look into what's possible versus all the obstacles. And so that is at this stage very much the case in the Western Balkan environment if you look at the European numbers. So this is where you have young people. Luckily now we have ample fiber optics. in the Western Balkan. And we have a great climate where people can still, or most people, when you walk around here in those small towns, you see they grow veggie gardens. They don't have a lawn. Yeah, so they actually grow their own food. How healthy is that? That's a new trend in America in the last 10 years. I think that was never not the normal state is in the Western Balkans. So they avoided the lawn phase and putting all the weed killers on in their garden. So they grow veggies and they wouldn't grow anything else. They would, in their logic, it's difficult to assume that you would put anything in your garden which you cannot eat. Yeah, and this is as simple as that. And that's great. So my kids logically were positively surprised to see that, but it makes so much sense. So they actually know where the veggies come from. They don't necessarily come from the grocery shop, but they have a context, and that context is powerful.
When it comes to the personal experience coming from your children, I noticed that you during your talks and even at the Tirana Nomad Festival when you were here present, you were referring a lot to the way that your younger daughter Maya was interpreting what she saw, and that was very pure, and that gave you all you needed to know as in terms of like how you feel about a certain country. Would you share with the rest of the attendees some experiences that you have had where your children have told you something that has really made you think about a country or even about life in general?
I think we are all born as transmitters. So we pick up signals and things pop up in our heads. We can call it intuition. You can call it a connection to the universe. It doesn't really matter. And that connection to the universe is so much better and so much healthier and so much more activated with younger kids because they were not told what's right or wrong. They're still open to that. And so they have a totally different, or they have a beautiful way to connect to new environments and look at stuff in a healthy manner. That's probably what George Land called in this NASA study the genius factor. Yeah, so we lose that when we get formally educated in conventional models. And yes, when you take Magnus or Maya to places, they look at things a little bit differently. And as an example, they felt safe. Yeah, so Maya, before she came to Albania, heard all kinds of things about Albania and the news and in discussions with people. And then when she was there, she said, wow, this feels really safe here. And people are nice and smile. And people love looking at kids. And when you go to a coffee shop, they're actually happy to see kids. And so that was refreshing. And a few interviews she brought up and said, you know what, it feels safe here. I can walk around and people treat me well. And at the playground, they actually actively talk to me. And that is a great feature. So she intuitively and her instincts connected to the place. And that was a response. And that was the same with Magnus, her brother. And that's what I experienced, not only in Albania, but the same in Kosovo and in certain parts of Macedonia. And so there's a very healthy way of dealing with children. And yes, it feels exceptionally safe. She didn't have the same response in other places. And so, as we all know, there are certain parts of the world where you cannot walk around with a watch anymore because they would steal your watch. And I never felt at risk of people staring at nice watches or things like that while being in Tirana, being in Pristina, being in Prizren, being in Skopje, being in Ohrid, or any of the places which we explored so far. And so that feels good.
Okay, thank you about this one as well. Look, when it comes to new families who would like and would love to embrace world schooling, what would be an advice for them on, let's say, steps that they might need to take in order to open themselves to this way of life?
We have inherited certain legacy systems from governments, including in Germany, where the laws, still by law, if you have your main residence in Germany, you are obliged to attend state school. 1 second. So you're obliged to attend state school. And so you would have to move out of that jurisdiction if you want to have the flexibility to do something slightly more creative. Magnus, can I finish this, please? Magnus. So you would have to move out of certain territories where world schooling or homeschooling or micro-schooling models are not allowed by law. And so as an example, Croatia has a similar law. So a similar law which comes from the late 1930s, what I often refer to as Nazi Germany. So you have to check what the legal system is when it comes to options and free schooling scenario. It works, as an example, in Italy. It works in certain countries in the Balkan. it works in the UK, it works in certain parts of France, etc. So when people embrace the fact and say, yes, we want to empower families to pick education models which are actually human-centric and where the kids are the center, so that is possible. And then logically, if you decide to create a life-centric model for your family, then you find the best solutions in places where you have a whole bunch around. Like in Bansko, you have now thousands of world schooling families who are part of the Bansko Facebook groups. Then you have actual groups who meet weekly and meetups as well with the kids and with the families. And so that is one issue. And but you know, if you have a place like a Bansko, which has a registered population of what, 9,000, and you have 9 co-working spaces, that's in any case a world record. So wherever you have clusters where that's more the normal feature, then like what I did this morning with my youngest daughter, I walked with her and she still fits into my jacket. And so you walk into tons of other families and people because you walk into them. It's part of the community. It's part of the local texture. And that's obviously not the case if you operate in certain cities in a place like Germany or Croatia, where that's kind of illegal. And they want to make sure that you can only allow your kids to read history books which are approved by the government. And they have a very specific way, especially in places like Croatia, to look at the last 30 years. If you read the same history books on the Serbian side, they would probably be totally different history books. And that's where I come from. So if you want to empower the kids to learn and find their own answers and look at history in a multinational perspective, look at newspapers in a multinational perspective, consider looking at something which happened and say, oh, I can look at a source, which is the New York Times or the Times of India or the London Times or the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung or whatever it is. So you can look at it from different angles. Then that happens where you find clusters of multinational people being in the same spot.
Okay, thank you very much about this one. And I think you mentioned like you mentioned a couple of countries, but most of the countries do actually have this legislation where it doesn't allow you at least until like the 9th grade or the 10th grade to actually do not educate yourself into the old unconventional.
It's not to most countries. It really countries who have a legacy system there, which was all based on controlling the population. Yeah, don't forget people like Nikola Tesla were mainly homeschooled in the beginning, and then when he attended a high school, they said, "Wow, why is the guy so bright?" If you look at the majority of your banknotes or coins, you will see that the majority of the people on your coins and banknotes actually were homeschooled. Yeah, if you look at the history books, being it anywhere, America, or the guys who wrote the American Constitution, Winston Churchill and others, they have been homeschooled. Yeah, because this allows you to have a human-centric education where you're not taught by the average of the people in the classroom. As an example, in sports, why should I, when I'm 1.5 heads taller than everybody else, do the same physical exercise than people who are kind of half my size? What's the point? Yeah, so that is the factory schooling model is all based on creating a model which works for the average, which with reasonable results and grades and all of it, but it doesn't really have the time to. It's not designed to support people individually, and with all the information these days available, including with AI. Yeah, so now we have countries where the schools are banning AI. How cuckoo is that? Yeah, so you should allow the kids to learn how to use it in a positive manner, but to trying to avoid pocket calculators is what I remember from my primary school and secondary school days. It's just cuckoo. Yeah, so you know what? Embrace the tools as they're there. Make sure they can use their brain capacity to learn how to learn, and they will always learn again, relearn, unlearn. So the literate of the future will be people who can learn, unlearn, relearn all the time. So this is what progress and progress of humanity is all about. And people who want to hold back to the old models, yes, they can. But as we have seen since COVID, it's an expired scenario.
Yeah, that actually would be my question. Do you think that the evolvement of the systems would make so more people would actually adapt to the new way, which is the world schooling, or you think that even with the passing of time, people will still stick to this traditional model of, let's say, learning in concrete boxes, as you mentioned?
Concrete boxes have not boosted the health of anybody. Yeah, so concrete boxes in itself are not something which helps people's health in any way or form, neither for their mental health nor for their physical health. And to be in locations where you can actually spend more time in nature. Yeah, don't forget the average child these days at secondary school spends less time in nature or less time outdoors than the average prison inmate. So these are data points to look at. And then you're not surprised when we have such a mental health problem of teenagers in 2024. So on a macro level, the thing which happens, which will take the educational sector by pandemic proportions, are microschools. And microschools are environments where 3-4 families get together and they bring their 5, 6, 7 kids together and on occasions do it themselves. So one of them volunteers time, or they even engage tutors, online, offline tutors. And this allows to have the most customized version which works for the largest number of people. So they create a microschool set up by themselves. Yeah, and one of them has a facility or maybe an empty space at home, or they swap between different places. Much of that education happens in any case outdoors. Yeah, so because it's so much more powerful. People remember more when they're either under the shower or when they're walking through the forest. Yeah, people have great ideas and and major flashpoints in their life, not when they're sitting in a concrete box, but when they go running or when they're in the forest. So why do people sleep better? Or my 1-year-old now sleeps so much better. She falls asleep when she hears the birds in the forest. Then she falls asleep. It's a natural feature. We all feel better when we hear the birds. But with her, you can actually, it's more visible. It's in the face. She's then a little bit agitated at certain times, and I take her out. We walk, and as soon as we're under the big pine trees and she hears the birds, boof, she passes out. So nice. And the energy which I receive when she's then sleeping under my jacket is beautiful, very recharging. It's another form of meditation. And so you will see micro schools will be the major thing, because that allows small groups of families who align on basic values, etc., to actually find a solution. Yeah. So, and we're now living at a day and age where primary schools have drag queens coming by, and school psychologists are counseling 8-year-olds on gender identification, and this is all so much off track. You know that. So the idea, the misleading formats which we have when it comes to genders these days, or the fact that my 5-year-old boy, when he talks to people and says 3 times stop something, and at the 3rd time when they still don't do it, he punches them. Yeah, and then the mothers come to me and say, "Oh, he punched my son." And I said, "What happened?" Nothing. And then I said, "Okay, Magnus, what happened?" "I told him 3 times to leave my bicycle alone. He didn't leave my bicycle alone, so I explained him how to do it." Boom. Yeah. So, but the idea of taking a position and protecting and standing up for something is kind of impossible by certain people's reality. And I believe it's a normal feature of his masculinity to stand up. And yes, he explains it once and twice. And if it's a 3rd time and the guy doesn't listen, then he takes his point and makes it clear. Yeah. And so that is an important feature. The world needs strong men. Yeah, full stop. And there's a reason why we have all this testosterone decrease and all these features, because factory boxes and no time in nature doesn't help. Yeah, and we have to have a situation that young boys are not the #1 target of everything. So that's clear. So you need that masculine energy to move the planet forward.
Thank you very much for the input, Andreas. And definitely, word schooling, as you are mentioning, will be what will be leading education in years to come, hopefully for everyone, just so we can understand and we can learn, as you mentioned, like the people on our bills and on our coins used to, because they ended up pretty well. So we might also want to end up like them. It's always a pleasure having these chats with you. I would like to thank you for being present here and always
Anytime.
being a collaborator of the Future is Remote. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And with this fireside chat, it has come the time to wrap up this marathon of knowledge and fun. I would like to thank everyone for the participation on our event and for being very interactive with our guests. Please make sure to collect your virtual goodie bags full of discounts and to write to us your impressions about the event. I wish you all a great day ahead and see you on our next event. We love you. Have a nice one.
Thank you, Scotty.
Thank you. Ciao.